Good evening, everyone. Today is, someone remind me what day is it? Today's April, thank you. Today's April 19th, and it has been 2 years, a month, and 2 days since we had a live council meeting in Cupertino. This is a special meeting of the Cupertino City Council prior to our regularly scheduled meeting for the second meeting in April. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the first live roll call in over 2 years?
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Way.
Here.
Councilmember Willie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Paul.
And I'm here. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. All right, so just a few very brief clerical items. I apologize with regard to, the various eye contacts here. We are in a hybrid environment here, and so each of us does have a computer in front of us. I'm not sure exactly, what would be normal in a regular meeting environment anymore in terms of where people are looking, but we do have a computer so that we can access the Zoom functionality here. So bear with us as we're, ironing out some of these wrinkles as we go forth here. And so our special meeting study session item, there's only one item, is a consideration of an update on the City of Cupertino Lobbyist Registration Program pursuant to Cupertino Municipal Code, Chapter 2.100 regarding lobbying registration and reporting requirements. And so my understanding is that our city clerk, Kirsten, you have the presentation this evening, is that correct?
Yes, Mayor.
All right, very good. Take it away.
Just give me one moment to...
And while you're doing that, I do want to kind of, in a live manner, introduce our other people on the dais with us. We have City Manager Jim Troop, who started in January. So welcome, Jim, to your first live meeting of the regular council. And we also have our City Attorney, Chris Jensen, who started with us last July. So this is truly, a brand new paradigm for, everyone here. We have, a fresh start here. So, Madam City Clerk, are we ready for the presentation?
Yes,
Right.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, so Cupertino Municipal Code CMC, Chapter 2.100 regulates lobbyists who seek to influence legislative and administrative actions taken by city officials and city bodies. Lobbyists must self-identify and disclose their clients when appearing in a lobbying capacity at any meeting with a city official or at a public meeting of the city council or any other city body. Lobbyist is defined to include 3 categories. First, the contract lobbyist is a person who engages in lobbying on behalf of one or more clients and who has received or has entered into an agreement for compensation of $1,000 or more for lobbying in any consecutive 3-month period. Second is a business or organization lobbyist, any business or organization whose owners, officers, or employees carry out lobbying on its behalf in an aggregate of 10 hours or more in any consecutive 12-month period. And last is the expenditure lobbyist, is a person who makes payments or incurs expenditures of $5,000 or more during any calendar year with the intent of soliciting or urging other persons to communicate directly with any city official in order to attempt or to influence legislative or administrative action. Lobbyists are required to register with the city clerk's office and pay registration fees to cover the city's administrative costs. Registration must be renewed annually by January 15th of each year. Additionally, lobbyists must submit quarterly reports disclosing their lobbying activities during each quarter. Quarterly reports for the prior 3-month period are due by January 15th, April 15th, July 15th, and October 15th. The registration for the fiscal year 21-22 is $178.96, and there is a $25 per day fine for delinquent fees. The ordinance also includes various exemptions from the definition of lobbyist. These exemptions are applied to avoid infringing on constitutionally protected petitioning activity. The city attorney has discretion to prosecute violations as infractions or misdemeanors as appropriate. If treated as an infraction, the fine would be $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second violation, and $500 for subsequent violations. If prosecuted as a misdemeanor, violations would be punishable by a fine up to $1,000, imprisonment for up to 6 months, or both. Violations are also subject to the administrative enforcement under CMC Chapter 1.10. So currently we have 6 lobbyists who have registered with the city of Cupertino. These lobbyists may be viewed in the public portal for lobbyist disclosure. It's also in the same location that lobbyists can register at, which is cupertino.org/lobbyist. It's the lobbyist registration page, or they can contact the city clerk's office. And that is the end of my presentation. So your action before you tonight, council, is to receive this update and to provide any direction to staff.
Well, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. Let's go to our members of the public, if anyone would like to speak on this item. And so I'll remind everyone that you'll need to have your hand raised on Zoom, or your blue card in if live, or you need to push *9 on your phone if you're calling in on the telephone, or if you wish to give a comment over email, please, within this period of time, which is when the first person is speaking, have your comment in. And I do see I have one blue card live. I don't have any hands from members of the public. I have one hand from the member of the public, and we will be going in that order. That will be the Zoom hands, and then live for the blue cards, and then any email requests for the city clerk to read those into the record. So we'll go with our first Zoom hand. That is from Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, council and staff. I want to thank you for working on this project. I have a question that I hope one of you would answer, is if a resident or someone feels that a person or group should be registered, who do they notify? What's the contact? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. And so what I'll do here, since Peggy, thank you very much for being succinct, we'll extend that time to a minimum of a couple of minutes for people to indicate that they would like to speak. At this point, I will go on to the blue card. And so the blue card is from Jennifer Griffin. And Jennifer, welcome. And I hate to belabor the point, but this will be our first live comment at a Cupertino City Council meeting in that 2 years, a month, and 2 days. Welcome, Jennifer.
Well, that's appropriate since I was the first member of the public to speak during oral when this building opened like 20 years ago. I know I look weird. I have my dentist retired, and I have had a tooth that has to be replaced. But that's not till Monday. It took me 6 weeks to get the appointment. Anyway, I'm glad to see you all back again. It's really nice to see everybody, and I'm sure that this hybrid situation will work out. I think that it's important that the city is working on the lobbying, having people register as lobbyists, because I have seen this in the city of San Jose. They have always required people that were lobbyists to register, and it's just normal. I mean, it's a matter of business. I believe city of Santa Clara, you have to also. And I think that for Cupertino, since the last couple of years, we have just things that have been happening in Cupertino, we've risen to the state level. And I think that it's important that we do things that bigger cities do, which is require lobbyists to register. And I think that it's appropriate, anyone that is being paid as a lobbyist, I think it's important that that regardless of what their company is, that the public knows that this is their company and this is what they are trying to get their message out for whatever reason. I find it very interesting because a lot of companies, a lot of tech companies have lobbyists. A lot of different types of companies have lobbyists. And we're living in an age where there are lobbyists that are up in Sacramento doing all sorts of things, environmental, housing, having dams be preserved or having new dams go in. And we really, really need to have this in terms of something modern for Cupertino. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. At this point, I don't see any further hands raised. I don't have additional blue cards. Madam City Clerk, was there anyone over email that wanted to have you read their comments into the record?
No, Mayor.
Okay, very good. So we are back to the dais. And so I'll go ahead and open this up to City Council. I'll start with some very brief comments. I'm very appreciative of the fact that we were able to pass this ordinance. I do appreciate the fact that, you know, there are very strong underpinnings of belief that there should be the ability for a corporation, an entity, to go ahead and, you know, express itself ultimately through monetary means. But I also very strongly believe that we have the right, and it is in our ordinance, to understand where that influence comes from. So no one's trying to, you know, curtail the message. People are just trying to understand, if you're getting paid to influence our decisions and to influence our meetings and our electorate, who's paying you and who is being paid? I think that, in a nutshell, is essentially the request for lobbying. I find it very surprising, frankly, that there's only 6 people. I guess, you know, just taking that at face value, what I would say is that, you know, probably some of the communication needs to be done, but at the same time, it would be nice to, you know, get some thoughts from my colleagues on the council, and also point out that there was a very, you know, good question asked about how do we make sure, and let me just pull up my notes on this very briefly. That was from Peggy Griffin. How do we make sure that you know, people are adequately registering here, and who do they report to within our city? I take it from the presentation that it may be the city attorney's office, but of course, you know, people vote for us, and they should let us know. And I think by extension, we would be able to inform our city attorney as well. So would anyone like to kind of take that on from staff as an initial comment before I bring it over to council? Does that sound about right? We go ahead and, you know, ask our residents to let us know, or can they tell someone from staff, such as the city attorney or the city clerk directly, if they had some concerns regarding someone who should be registering as a lobbyist but is not? Yeah. Oh, and sorry, Mr. City Attorney, you'll have to. The green light means go. Right. And a little bit closer to the.
If they reach out to either the clerk's office or my office, we will review the complaint and, if appropriate, investigate. Okay,
very good. And
yeah, Mayor Paul, I just have a general question, maybe for Kirsten. And looking at the list that we have of people who have registered, I was wondering if Kirsten could share the screen and show us how we go to the website and look up who the individuals actually are. So, for instance, we have Apple Incorporated as a lobbyist, and when I go to click on that, I get led over to their application page, and then I'm given 3 different names. So I was wondering if that could be shared, so that, and then I wasn't sure if the first, the Mr. Endem, I'm not really sure how to view what organization he is representing. Okay, thank you.
Sure, I will share my screen. Okay, so here is this is from the lobbyist registration page. At the bottom of the screen, there is the public access portal. There is a get started link, which you select, and then it will take you to our vendor host page to search for the filed statements. So these are all of the entities that have filed to date. If you go to the far right, there should be live links to view the filings. So, I'll just, I believe this one I just filed yesterday. It downloads to the bottom of your screen as a PDF. And then this is all of the required information. So this filing happened to be a quarterly report. The first quarterly report was due this past Friday, April 15th. And so we received a number of filings from our current lobbyists. And if it were, say, a registration, the initial registration box would be checked, and then an annual renewal and so forth. So then this is the various information that's required. We do redact the information that we consider sensitive as a safeguard, though any member of the public can choose to come visit the city clerk's office to inspect the documents unredacted. And so the information that should be included is contact information that if it's somebody that's lobbying on behalf of a company, who they're meeting with, and what the purpose of the meetings relate to, what type of lobbyists they fall under, of those three categories: the contract lobbyist, as well as the business organization. And then at the bottom, so these should all be filled out as appropriate. And then they include a fee and any delinquent fees. So in this case, this is a quarterly filing, so there aren't any fees associated with the quarterly filing, only the annual registration. Is that sufficient?
Through the mayor,
Sure.
thank you. So, Kirsten, if you could scroll back up, there were a couple of other names that were on this document, and I'm just wondering if this is just one individual filing. Looking at the Apple filing, it seems as though this shows the name of the business, so I'm going to assume this is the Marina Plaza project. And then we have the owner's officers or employees line with the Mr. Wong and Ms. Wong is the actual lobbyist. So Albert would not be able to lobby. He would have to actually file another document if he were to, or is he included in this?
And I will defer to the city attorney, but my understanding is if Albert wishes to lobby, then he would be required to file a register as well.
Chris?
Is that accurate, Mr. City Attorney?
I believe that's correct, unless he falls under one of the exceptions in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And through the mayor, also, could they? It looks like because the way Apple filed their paperwork, that they had 3 individual lobbyists underneath the Apple name. So I'm going to assume that this Marina Plaza could have filed their paperwork saying Marina Plaza LLC, just like Apple did, and then put various names under it. The reason why I kind of take issue with that, the way that the Apple lobbyists are filed, is that you have to kind of dig into the paperwork to find out who the actual lobbyists are for that company. And here, it seems pretty clear we have the individual's name, and then you have to kind of reverse work to find out who they represent by digging into the paperwork there. So I'm not, I guess ideally I would want to see the person's name and the company all together in this top level summary, so I don't have to dig into the paperwork.
Yeah, Apple is a little bit different because they do have somebody lobbying on their behalf. Politicom is the company. So they did file a little bit differently. They named Apple as the lobbyist instead of their own lobbyist company. So perhaps it might be appropriate for them to file as Politicom, to be lobbying on behalf of Apple. So I can work with the city attorney to make it more clear, and they can file an amendment. I can request an amendment.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore, as well as Madam City Clerk. I believe the Vice Mayor, you would like to speak, Vice Mayor?
Okay, hi. I noticed that San Francisco has something called not contract lobbyist, but contact lobbyist. They are making contact with the elected officials. So I wonder that might be something that we should consider in the future. And for now, I have a question about what if someone lobbies the city staff? Because we know that most of the work actually is done before it's put on the council agenda, and 90% of the policy might be formed. So what's the disclosure requirement if some entity lobbies the city staff?
Vice Mayor Chow, I just want to laud you for that comment. I find that astounding and quite insightful. For me, it's a matter of first impression. I haven't heard that, in the context of our lobbying ordinance, but that's a really great point. That's what people in the industry often refer to as back channeling, and you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of stuff gets done through that mechanism. I will note, this is, again, our first meeting back. I think our city attorney might be having some technical issues. Is that right? Okay. Well, let me do this, because this is so, legally heavy. I would like to make sure that, Chris, your office is able to speak to our items. Let's just take a 5-minute break, and we'll reconvene. I have 5:51. We'll reconvene at 5:57 just to make sure that we have the ability to get the full, ability for the city attorney's office to engage.
Should I maybe finish my question, then city attorney can think about it during the time?
Let's just reconvene at 5:57,
Okay.
because I just want everyone's full attention on this one. Thanks a lot. So we'll see you in about 5 minutes. And so we're going to go ahead and continue with the Vice Mayor's question. Vice Mayor? And this is item 1 of our study session.
Second question is regarding 501c organization who does advocate for policies. Right now they are exempt from registration, but what if some entity makes donation to this 501c organization who then lobbies for a certain policy direction? I find out San Francisco has this major developer requirement that all major developer with more than like $300,000 project are required to disclose all their donation to any nonprofit that's working in the city. That might be something to consider for transparency. I think we are not trying to limit any lobbying, like Mayor said, but the residents do need to know to have transparency on how and who are doing those lobby. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. And just to encapsulate it, Mr. City Attorney, a couple of topics. The lobbying of staff. Is there anything that we could be looking at for this ordinance to try to get some clarification if people are trying to go directly to our staff? And second, the Vice Mayor was talking about 501c organizations and the exemption from registration. Could you elaborate a bit more on that topic?
So there is an exemption for 501c organizations. That's common in lobbying ordinances, not just in Cupertino and in other jurisdictions. I think we would have to look carefully at legal issues if there was a desire to modify that exemption. And staff is covered under the current lobbying ordinance. There are exemptions that would cover a number of activities, depending on the amount of time spent lobbying city officials, depending on, whether that person is lobbying on behalf of a business that they own, a number of other exemptions, including, as we mentioned earlier, the exemption for 501c organizations. So, if there were a desire to narrow those exemptions, we would need to look at, any legal issues that we'd need to take into consideration.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Okay, so just to be clear, on the staff side of things, if you're lobbying staff, then you do fall under this ordinance, correct? Is essentially what you just said.
That's correct. It's to influence the action of a city official.
Absolutely. Okay, and then the second question for the 501c entities, just to clarify this, just because you're a member of a 501c entity, that doesn't give you blanket protection. You can't just go ahead and say, well, I'm a member of, for example, this 501c3 nonprofit or charitable organization, and therefore I can go in front of city council and tell them to do anything I want because I'm a member of this organization. You actually have to make it clear that you're lobbying on behalf of that organization for a position that they have. Is that not correct?
That's
in order
correct.
to follow?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, very good.
Just a minute. So I understand San Francisco also has that exemption, but then they, they are not, I'm not saying we should remove or limit that exemption, but they are just adding transparency by requiring disclosure of donation to 501c organization from people who have large projects who could potentially benefit financially in significant amount.
Yeah, so if council were interested in pursuing additional disclosure requirements, I think you would want to give direction to staff, and again, we'd want to look at legal issues that surround any changes, and certainly we'd take a close look at the San Francisco ordinance.
Okay, very good. Let me go ahead, Councilmember Moore, before I call back on you. Councilmember Way or Willie, did you, either of you have a comment or a question, or comments or questions that you wanted to make before we head back to Councilmember Moore? Councilmember Way and then Willie.
So if I listen carefully of city attorney's comments, so it's not just city staff, but also elected officials. Everybody's covered under this ordinance, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councilmember Way. Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so my questions are a little bit more how this is actually seen by the community. So somebody is registered as a lobbyist, and it's on record, but when they, let's say they speak at the podium, do they need to identify themselves that they are a lobbyist for this, as opposed to making it seem like they're just a community member on behalf of themselves? That's kind of the first question. How does this apply to that? Do they need to identify themselves when they're speaking?
I don't believe there's a requirement in the current ordinance that requires people to identify themselves as such when they're speaking. Again, if we were to add that requirement, we'd want to look very carefully at any restrictions on compelled speech, which does raise First Amendment concerns.
So I would want to make that a point. Transparency is truly what's needed for democracy to work, for the community to know what's going on. And when individuals come to the podium to try to sway the council on different issues, and yet they don't identify that they're part of a group in San Francisco, and the appearance is, oh, maybe that's just, a resident that lives off of De Anza Boulevard or something, and it leaves a total misunderstanding by the bigger population that's looking to see, what's right for the community. Man, if we get a lot of people that come and speak on something, and they all seem to be, living in this small vicinity, then likely we'll tend to bend more in that direction. But if they're truly not, then we should, the community should know that, so that we then make the right decision for the community. So I could go and say it gets a little bit more complicated when we have something like AB 1174, and we had these different groups that were advocating in Sacramento on behalf of development within Cupertino. And once again, it's not evident to the community here what's going on, and how do we, point that out? How do we make sure it's all transparent? And so I sure hope we somehow have city staff take a few of these examples and then come back and give us confidence that we've got it covered, or options to make it better for transparency to the community. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. And Vice Mayor Chow, I'll call on you after I make some brief comments. And then after Councilmember Moore, who also had her hand raised. Mr. City Attorney, I understand and appreciate your comment with regard to compelled speech. At the same time, I think that the members of the public also have the right to ask their questions. And so I would just make as a comment, and please feel free to interject if that's somehow incorrect. People are free to ask, including us, are you aware of our lobbyist ordinance? Are you registered under our lobbying ordinance of, people that are speaking and, at least seem to, at least one of us to might be, falling under a lobbying requirement. I mean, so that's just my comment. No need to, comment. But if you think that's not right, I mean, I certainly think that I have the right to ask if someone's aware of our lobbying ordinance. And then my other comment, although this is partly a question as well, and again, I promise to go back to Councilmember Moore and Vice Mayor Chow after this. I was noticing in one of our other ordinances, and this is something that we've actually enacted not too long ago as well. This had to do with multifamily housing units and smoking. There is a right of action to bring a civil action to enforce violations. So I'm wondering whether that could be incorporated into our lobbying ordinance. And so let me pull up that section of the smoking ordinance that I'm interested in. So I'm sharing my screen here. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I apologize if I'm not quite getting some of this correct. But if you can see my cursor, it would be 10.90.060. And my interest is just in adding this, I think, fairly simple clause. Any person may bring a civil action to enforce this chapter to prevent future violations and may sue to recover actual or statutory damages, including court costs and attorney fees. And so, Mr. City Attorney, my question, or the City Clerk, my question is there anything preventing us from modifying our lobbying ordinance to include this clause?
No, I don't think there would be any legal restriction on adding a private right of action to the lobbying ordinance.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much. Let me go back to Councilmember Moore and then Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So looking at the 501c organizations, under the 501c6, you have business leagues, chamber of commerce, real estate boards, boards of trade, and pro football leagues, which I think one of our neighboring cities would be interested in that one. But these would be exempt. I'm just not quite understanding, because these would be essentially lobbying organizations, and I would think they would need to register, but yet we seem to have exempted them. And in particular, I think it's somewhat confusing to me, because we have donated money, city money, to a 501c6 organization which has a PAC, and that PAC then went and endorsed and gave financial assistance to the campaigns of certain candidates for city council, and then also endorsed and supported development projects. And they continue to, in my words, lobby for legislation, which is in process right now, even. So I don't understand how, what's the loophole that's making it so that they don't have to register?
Well, there is an exception for 501c6 entities in the lobbying ordinance. Also, campaign activity would not necessarily be lobbying activity. So, that's regulated differently under California law and at the state level.
Okay, and through the mayor, so are we unable to require a 501c6 to register as a lobbyist is there some law preventing us to do that? And then if that's the case, is our recourse then we don't want to donate money to an organization which is turning around and lobbying us, and there's nothing we can, we're essentially paying them to
Councilmember
lobby
Moore,
us.
just for the sake of time efficiency, I'm going to interject because I believe the city attorney has already answered that question. He stated that he would need to go back and look into the law, basically research the requirements of 501Cs and see whether there are some flexible points with regard to adjusting the lobbying ordinance to encompass their reporting requirements. Now, if I'm putting words in your mouth, Chris, please let me know.
Yeah, that's correct. If there were specific direction from council to look at that, we would both research any known legal limitations and look at ordinances in other jurisdictions to try to come up with what best practices are.
Right. Okay, so I'm kind of formulating a motion in my mind that will be included as part of the motion that I'd like to set forth. But Councilmember Moore, if you're done, if not, did you have any other comments or questions at this point?
Just that when you look into the 501Cs, if you'll go into all of them, including religious organizations, private foundations, and because there's a whole host of these 501Cs that I'd like to hear about.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. And in fact, I was just going to identify 501Cs and not put a sub number in there. Really quick question, Chris, and this is from Councilmember Moore's comment. Was it pro sports or pro football organizations, particularly Councilmember Moore, that you had in there? Because I know, I'll just give a little bit of a history lesson. I actually asked for this initially a couple of years ago, and I had indicated to our then representative of the firm, representing the city attorney's office, that Santa Clara already had a lobbying ordinance. So I'm wondering whether that might be an artifact of Santa Clara's, being used as a template. Was it pro football or was it pro sports?
I'm on the IRS site for 501c6s,
the IRS site. Got it.
And it's a listing, and it says Section 501c6 of the IRS specifically defines professional football leagues as exempt organizations under that section. These organizations are exempt whether or not they administer a pension fund for football players.
All right, got it. Interesting. Go football. All right, well, I retract that question. I'm assuming that that's not specifically called out in our municipal ordinance as an exemption, football teams or football organizations.
No, I don't recall that specific exemption.
Okay, but Councilmember Moore, thank you for doing that deep dive into the IRS code and identifying that particular type of 501c6. Okay, let's go to Vice Mayor Chow at this point. Vice Mayor.
So first, response to Council Member Whaley's comment about person speaking in a public meeting. Actually, our current muni code has a section called exemptions to lobbyists, include number 4. If they are speaking in a public meeting, provide testimony, and that's in public record and available for public review, that's not considered lobbying. I think San Francisco has a similar exemption. So I think this lobbying is really for transparency, that for things that does not happen in a regular public meeting. So to clarify that. And the question to follow up on the potential lobbying activity for city staff, as we know that we often contract out when we are lack of staff for consultants. And consultants do provide policy direction and recommendations to the council. So how would the lobbying ordinance affect consultants who get lobbied by the various organizations? And often they are not even using a city account for public record purposes. Or they might have lunch, dinner, who knows?
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. And Chris, did you want to take on those couple questions?
Yeah, so the lobbying ordinance regulates contacts with city officials, so that includes staff, and it includes elected officials and appointed officials. It would not necessarily include city contractors, and I believe the theory being that city staff will always be supervising city contractors, and again, I think it would be unusual to have a lobbying ordinance that was directed at private sector employees, and if that was something council were interested in exploring, we would have to look at it very closely.
Interesting. Okay, well, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow, and I do see Councilmember Moore is indicating that she'd like to speak again. Councilmember Moore.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Paul. And this is kind of following on with what the Vice Mayor said. So what happens if you have a developer, for instance, that has somebody that's registered as a lobbyist, and they together go to the city, maybe the planning department. They know that we have a lot of these big RENA numbers, and they want to advocate to get a good number of those for their particular property, and then perhaps you could have a member of the planning department then pass this on to to the city council during the determination of where these numbers would get located. Now, I would think that would fall under lobbying, but it also seems to be something that foreseeably would be ordinary process with the developer coming to the planning department. So could you clarify where it might become lobbying if it isn't entirely?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Moore. It kind of reminds me of some of the Brown Act requirements, such as like serial communications or something along those lines. It sort of sounds like that. But Chris, did you want to speak to that notion? Whether there could be kind of a multi-communication originating from someone who might be, defined as a lobbyist under the ordinance. So
if it's an I think it might be legally difficult to reach that type of indirect communication, because, you'd essentially be regulating speech between two private individuals. And, the lobbying ordinances here and in other jurisdictions tend to target direct contacts with city officials.
Oh, but in Councilmember Moore's example, Mr. City Attorney, the lobbyist would be talking directly to a city official, in this case, a planning department person. So that wouldn't necessarily just be two private individuals, right?
That's correct, yeah. So in that case, unless an exception applies, then, that contact would be lobbying.
Okay. Well, this is good. I really appreciate the discussion here. There are larger concerns here at the end of the day. I mean, we've all heard about things that we have heard classified over the course of the last several years as fake news. And, it's not necessarily relegated to one side or the other. We want accurate information, and it's an open and free society, but we're also best served by understanding where, particular, certainly monetary directions and motivations are coming from. So what I'd like to do at this point is call on Councilmember Way, who is waving at me. So, and then Councilmember Woolley, you wanted to follow up as well? So Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I would like to ask a city attorney a question, because I believe communications are very important. So what's the difference between communication and lobbying? Because I do believe we have individually met with Amy Chen, and that's open, that's pretty, before she contacted me, I asked, should I talk to her? And my instruction from city attorney is it's okay, because we are listening to input. So what's the distinction between communication and lobbying? Because I would think if I own a land and I want to be part of the arena, I might contact Ben Fu and say, hey, I have a land, and is that communication or is that lobbying?
So, lobbying is basically defined as trying to influence the decision of a city official. That said, there are numerous exemptions to that, and those exemptions may apply, particularly when a person is advocating on their own behalf, whether they're a business owner or a property owner. So you really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, and and see if this person qualifies as a lobbyist, and if they do, whether one of those exemptions applies.
Okay. Well, thanks for the comment and question, Councilmember Woolley. Councilmember, we'll call on you after that, Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Woolley?
Yeah, so I'm still pretty much focused to making sure things are transparent when it's presented and the community is seeing, that they know what they're seeing. Vice Mayor's reference to that chapter or section 4 and the exemption, I'd really like to remove those types of exemptions. When somebody wants to present something, if our commissioners frequently speak. Over the past 2 years, it's by Zoom meeting, and they say, I'm such and such commissioner, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself only. If they were speaking on behalf of the whole commission, they would do likewise. And I think that needs to be expanded to other people that are addressing the city council in front of the community, so that the community truly knows what the intent is. And it's very easy to be deceptive and represent some group from outside of the area and make it appear that they're raising the issue as if they lived in this community here. And I think the community needs to know that. So I'd be really hoping we remove those exemptions. We're not trying to inhibit speech. In my view, we're not trying to inhibit in any way. We just want it to be clearly transparent in terms of what the intent was behind what the appearance was. Intent versus appearance. So thanks. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much, Councilmember Woolley and Vice Mayor Chow.
So regarding Amy Chen, I met with her 2 or 3 times. She did tell me she is a registered lobbyist. So her action is lobbying for the particular project, and she is paid to do. So she was very transparent about that. And also I took issue with city attorney's interpretation that consultants are individuals. When they work for a city as a public contractor, they are acting as a public official under our definition. So they are not individuals, and they are bound by public. I think any city staff has to abide by any conflict of interest or anything. Consultants should abide by them too. Otherwise, we shouldn't contract anything out. I'm really concerned about that interpretation. Another thing is this ordinance right now is only limited to legislative actions and administrative actions. But then we have seen that there are programs being proposed and CIP projects being proposed that we don't know who proposed them, who pushed for them, but they land on our council agenda. So those right now is not covered by the lobbying ordinance. I wonder we should also include people who push for sometimes $500,000, $1 million project on the council agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. And let me just follow up with a quick question to the city attorney on your comments. So Chris, a contract consultant with the city for these purposes, if it's some kind of project that's being done on behalf of the city, if someone is trying to influence their decisions based upon the work that they are doing for the city, is that interaction not considered part of the umbrella of actions that would be covered by this ordinance? Because there is a monetary relationship. So I'm trying to understand if Vice Mayor Chow's understanding, at least from what I was able to glean of it, is accurate. And maybe you guys had a different conversation, but I wasn't hearing that point covered in our conversation here. So maybe some clarification is needed as well. So Chris, am I hearing that right? I mean, would that be potentially something that would be harder for us to get at if we're considering an outside consultant a non-party with regard to the city.
So the lobbying ordinance, requires an attempt to influence a city official. So I think, theoretically, that could be done, through an intermediary. I think it would be challenging to show that the person, who is not having direct contact with the city, should be registered as a lobbyist in practice.
Got it. Okay. I hear what you're saying, and I think that is worth testing if it came down to it. I mean, particularly if it was a project of such significant import to the city. But I hear what you're saying. Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised again. Did you want to follow up very briefly?
So
I want to be able to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
So someone contacting a consultant who works for the city is not the indirect contact with the city. They act as city staff.
Oh, Vice Mayor,
Right.
yeah, there's no need to reiterate your point. I think it's been made, and let's just keep going at this point.
So one potential thing is, I think I read somewhere, I forgot where, a city has requirement for consultant to disclose their the donation they made to others or they receive. And so there are certain cities who do require disclosure for donations being made to or from between consultant and other entities.
Okay. This is what I'd like to move in an effort to increase transparency and reduce exemptions. I'd like to move that the City Council directs staff to examine the exemptions based upon 501c organizations, which apparently are exempt from registration under our current lobbying ordinance, and to examine an added requirement to indicate contributions to the organization by potentially lobbying entities or people. I'd also further like to move that we add a private right of civil action for enforcement of the ordinance to our lobbying ordinance. May I have a second for this motion?
Yes, I second that,
Thank you,
Mayor Paul.
Councilman
I want to clarify that the issue of an organization also having a PAC would be included in that dive into the 501c organizations.
Okay, I will go ahead and amend the motion to include examination of the significance of a political action committee, because I know, Councilmember Moore, you were recently wrongly described as being part of the VTA Political Action Committee, when in fact you are part of the VTA PAC, but that stands for Policy Advisory Committee. So just to explicate that, do you accept that as a seconder?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. Vice Mayor Chow, there's a motion on the floor. Did you want to discuss?
I hope to add an amendment.
Okay, what's your amendment?
So our ordinance right now, city official does include the city staff. I would like to add city staff including consultants.
Okay, I would like to go ahead and make an amendment to my motion to include direction to staff to study the issue of whether consultants could be included in the aegis of those that are considered city officials for purposes of the lobbying ordinance. Now, these are paid consultants by the city. Councilmember Way? Oh, before I go to you, Councilmember Way, Councilmember Moore, will you accept that as the seconder of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Way?
So just clarify, this is to instruct the staff to do research on this.
That's correct, and bring that
Okay.
back to us.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I think we do have a lot of consultants, and the consultants doesn't just work for Cupertino, they work for a lot of other cities and organizations. So it's just a
Yeah.
research. See
Let
how-
me
yeah,
constrain
okay.
this and
All right.
specify. I'm not going to change the language of the motion, but this is for that which they are paid by the city to do particular things. So within the realm of that activity, not anything that they could possibly do or be working on for anybody in the world. So that's the motion. It's been twice amended. Are there any questions for clarifications from staff on this? Okay, I'm seeing head shakes basically, so I don't see any other indications of wanting to speak. Vice Mayor Chow, before we go ahead and call this vote.
So part of your motion is contribution to organizations. Does that include the consultant organizations who contract with the city?
I was referencing your reference to the San Francisco ordinance with regard to their Chamber of Commerce, if any, and forgive me if I'm not getting this verbatim, your description was if there's a major development, for instance, and a developer gives significant donations or any contributions to the 501c, in this case 501c6 nonprofit organizations. My understanding of your description was that San Francisco was requiring disclosure and description of those contributions made to the 501c6 lobbying organization.
Mm-hmm.
I had not, expanded it in my mind with regard to other types of iterations. And frankly, at this point, I'm not really sure it makes sense to kind of broaden the universe in the way that you're describing it.
Since we are exploring, right? And as I remember, there is a city that does require consultants to also disclose their contributions. Just wondering, are you interested in looking into what other cities have done in that aspect?
This is what I'll do, Vice Mayor Chow. If you can find something at our next meeting when staff brings us back, I'd be happy to look into it. I can see what you're saying. If there's a major project that the city is undertaking and a consultant is being kind of looked at sideways by an applicant, and the applicant thinks to themselves, well, this consultant clearly has a lot of pull with regard to this project. Why don't I just kind of give them, an Austin Powers $1 million to, build a new submarine? I don't know. But, at this point, why don't you bring that back with examples next time we, bring this to council?
Yeah,
Once
okay,
staff has
makes
had
sense.
their time. Okay, well, thanks very much. Let's go ahead and conduct that roll call vote. Oh, actually, you know what? We're back on the dais. Please vote with your lights.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. All right, we're at the end of our special meeting agenda. We will go ahead and adjourn this special meeting. Our regularly scheduled council meeting is going to begin in approximately 12 minutes. And so we'll see you at 6:45. Meeting adjourned. This is April 19th, 2022. This is the regularly scheduled second meeting in April of the Cupertino City Council. We are live, and if you would please stand to join us in pledging allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Councilmember Moore,
Here?
Councilmember Way,
Here.
Councilmember Willie,
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Here.
Mayor Paul.
Here. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And we're very pleased today, as our sole ceremonial matter, to be able to provide a proclamation to a longstanding civil servant in our community. That would be Polly Beauvais of the Fremont Union High School District. She is the superintendent of good stead and decades experience in that position. And we are also very pleased as a council to be able to present this to Polly. And so if my fellow council members would please meet me in the middle of the dais, let's go ahead and invite Superintendent Beauvais. I do have a blue card, a request to speak from a member of the public. Let us go ahead and present the proclamation first, and we'll let the member of the public speak after we do that. All right, so the proclamation, I think, Madam City Clerk? Well, folks, here we are. We're live again. Let's see if we can figure out what to do here. All right. So, Polly, you've got a mic. I've got a mic. I'm not going to read the proclamation unless you want me to. It is your discretion. This is from the city of Cupertino, thanking you for all of your years of wonderful service to our students and to the community. Polly, did you want to say a few words before we present this formally?
Well, I just want to say this is an incredible honor. And I have loved serving this community for all the years I've had the privilege of doing so. And I just know that being here tonight and getting this honor from you really signals what I've always known, which is education is one of the most important things in this community. It is valued by our parents, it is valued by our community, it's valued by you as a council, and I can only hope that not just the support you've provided for the many years I've had the privilege of working with the district, but moving forward with the next person who I'm sure is going to have incredible vision and capacity to take us further and further, that you as a council will support our district, our Cupertino Elementary School District, and our families, because I think it's in that united effort that we can do so much more. And I guess I would say I'm only here because of that kind of effort, right? Because I have an incredible staff, incredible kids, incredible families, and incredible community support. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Superintendent Beauvais. And a big round of applause, a big live round of applause for the superintendent.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's look over to Esther there.
Thank you. Thank you.
right.
Here, you can
All
be
right.
two-fisted.
So we do have a member of the public. That's Gilbert Wong, who sent in a blue card. And so, Gilbert, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Welcome, Gilbert. I'll go ahead and make a public comment exemption to proclamation, since you're here as our former mayor and a member of the public, first member of the public to speak in a regular council meeting in 2+ years. Welcome, Gilbert.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy Paul, and the Cupertino City Council, and our new city manager and city attorney. I'm just really happy to be back in our city council chambers, as this is the People's Hall. And I'm very glad to be here on your first proclamation to give to our beloved superintendent of Fremont Union High School District. She has over 50 years of knowledge and service to our community, and has worked really hard as our high school trustee, as our superintendent, as both of the trustees are very honored to have her. Both of my daughters are, one of them graduated from Homestead High School, and her high school diploma was signed by Superintendent Beauvais, and my little one, who will be graduating this December. So at least both of them will be under Polly's leadership, and the trustee, I see Naomi Matsumoto also here too, that we really cherish the partnership that we have with the City of Cupertino, Fremont Union High School District. Polly mentioned the CUSD, as well as the Flahill de Anza Community College District, that we really live here because of our school district and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gilbert.
You're welcome.
And we do have another blue card that came in under the wire. We have the president of the Fremont Union High School District Board, Naomi Nakano Matsumoto. I do have one hand raised in Zoom as well, but I think that might not be for this item, and that hand is lowered. Welcome, President Nakano Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Naomi Nakano Matsumoto. I am the president of the Fremont Union High School District Board. We would like to thank you for this very well-deserved recognition of our superintendent, Polly Bovey. We are very sad to have her leave us. She has built a great education system here in the Cupertino-Sunnyvale area, and as she said, part of that is because of the partnership we have with the city of Cupertino and the great people who live here, and how much the residents here value education. And Polly has been that leader to lead us in equity work, in excellence work. We have, a 95% graduation rate. And so just want to really say thank you to Polly, because she is one of the reasons that make your city great. So thank you for your partnership, and we look forward to working together with our new superintendent.
Thank you, Naomi. Keep up the great work at FUHSD. And so I do have a hand waving at me from Councilmember Way. Councilmember Way, I will grant you the minute, all right? So, and as preface to that, and I will open it up to other council members if they want to speak, I realize that you were a long-time sitting board member working with Polly as well. So, Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I really want to personally say I served on the Fremont Union High School District with Polly from 2007 to 2018. I've seen her in action. Her love and passion for our kids is just extremely admirable. And I want to quote this in her office: public education is the best, is the most is equalizer in our community, and she truly believes that, and she brings that to the children and to the students and to the family. So, Polly, you have my admiration. I'm pretty sure retirement is just a start of new adventures.
Thank you, Councilmember Way, and I know that I speak for the entire council when I say that we echo the sentiments, and thanks a lot for almost making the superintendent cry in the first live meeting. But in any event, yes, you do have our deep-seated appreciation for your service, Polly. I'm going to go ahead, and Vice Mayor, we open the door. Okay, so please keep it brief within the minute. Thanks, Vice Mayor.
So, Polly, I think Cupertino is really honor that to have you as superintendent. I'm impressed when there are difficult decisions, you really engage the community and are willing to slow down and reach a compromise, the solution, so that that serve the different needs of the community. And then you really are in touch with the community. That I'm so happy that you reach out to me to endorse the bond major and parcel tax for FUHSD. That really shows that you are in touch and knows how to really engage the community to get things done. And that has been proven by a lot of things that you have accomplished in Fremont Union. So thank you. We are going to miss you.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I don't see any other indications from my fellow council members except from Councilmember Willie. So Councilmember Willie, I believe you will have last word here. It's not a request or a dare, but Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, wonderful. I just want to thank Polly for that many years. You have touched so many lives. You'll never know, we'll never know where all those students have gone, all the accomplishments that those students have achieved, and your efforts are behind all of them, and there's no words to express, that kind of effect on people. Thank you so much. I can only hope our next superintendent will likewise affect that many students. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. And I think that will do it. We'll go on to oral communications, but before we do that, we have postponements and orders of the day on the agenda itself, because we did continue this item, which is item number 29 on our agenda from our prior regular council meeting. We do have a request from staff to consider the municipal code amendments to the Muni Code Title II, adding Chapter 2.96 regarding the Economic Development Committee. I know I have another request from staff, and so City Manager Jim Troop, did you want to add another postponement at this point as a request to council?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask that we postpone item number 24, the fee schedule update. I did end up having some additional questions on it that I just need to get with staff. I didn't want to present it and then have to come back again to council with any changes. So
okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. City Manager Troop. I will go ahead and move the fee schedule update. And because it is actually quite a busy agenda tonight, I'm going to go ahead and add in my motion item number 26 as well. This is the consideration of conducting the first reading of an ordinance related to regulation of single-use plastic foodware and single-use carryout bags. I wanted to do this at the beginning of the meeting so that we wouldn't have to have the members of the public or staff stay if they didn't need to. So including those two items, the other postponement is item 29, and I would suggest that we postpone them to May 3rd, similar to item 29. As described in the agenda. May I have a second for this motion? Councilmember Way seconds. And is there any, let's go to public comment first. I do see one hand raised. Call-in user 1, to let you know we are on postponements and orders of the day. There's a motion on the table, but I'll go ahead and bring this to call-in user 1. Just as fair warning, if you're not talking about this particular item, I will mute you. And so call-in user 1, I think you're calling in, you'll need to hit *6 on your phone in order to be heard on this item. Okay, so call-in user Yes, call-in user 1, please. If you wanted to speak on postponements, please do. You'll have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think you're talking about postponement, though. So, I mean, I think I was...
Okay. I went ahead and muted call-in user 1, so who explicitly said that that person is not talking about postponements. So let me go ahead and bring this back to council. I think there was an indicator from Councilmember Moore. Did you want to speak on the motion that's on the table, Councilmember?
Mayor Paul, I just want to clarify. So with regards to the single-use plastic ordinance, what is your motion?
I'm actually asking to postpone that in addition to items 27 and 29 to May 3rd.
Okay, so you want to postpone 26, 27?
The fee schedule, if I misspoke, I apologize.
Okay.
Whatever the fee schedule is, that might be 24, is that right?
Okay.
24.
Okay, not 20, is 27 the work plan item?
Yes.
Okay, no, we're not postponing that. So 24, 26, and 29 to postpone to May 3rd. That is the motion.
May 3rd. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion points, Vice Mayor?
So your reason is that the single-use plastic is not the first item, but it's the second. So what you intend it to be the next time?
I'm not sure what your question
So
is.
your reason for postponing is you wish that this item could be considered in the beginning of the meeting.
No, that's not my reason at all.
Oh.
I think we just don't have enough time to get to some items. And I don't want to have people that are here for that item wait until 11 or 11:30 to hear that the item's being postponed or continued.
Okay.
So, and I won't apologize in advance if we get done, say, at like 10:30. I think that would be a real success on our part. And I think that this ordinance, it can stand a few weeks for us to have an initial consideration of it. Okay, thanks, Vice Mayor. All right, no other indicators of speaking from council, so Madam City Clerk, could you please conduct that? I'm sorry, please vote with your lights. Thanks very much.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And just to repeat, items 24, 26, and 29 are not going to be considered this evening. We are on to oral communications. Oral communications is for any members of the public that wish to speak on any item that can be considered by the City Council but is not on our agenda. I'll go ahead and start with members of the public who have their hands raised on Zoom. I will then go on to blue cards that are coming in live, and then we will go to any email requests that come in while the City Clerk is monitoring her email address. And Madam City Clerk, is it cityclerk@cupertino.org? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, if you send an email to cityclerk@cupertino.org during this time to indicate that you would like to speak on this item, and this will go for other items as well, then the City Clerk will read your comment up to 3 minutes during this time. And so please indicate you'd like to speak during the time that the first person is speaking. The hands that I have raised on the Zoom function at this moment are Rashi Sharma, call-in user 1, Peggy Griffin, and Lisa Warren. Welcome, Rashi.
Good evening, Mayor, Paul, and council members. My name is Rashi Sharma. I am a local high schooler and volunteer with the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. Our planet is experiencing a loss of all life forms. A recent study mapped concentration of imperiled species in the country. It highlighted California, including the Bay Area, as a hotspot for loss of species. It shows that our society must find and implement creative solutions to reduce impacts to wildlife species and biodiversity. This includes how we plan roads and streets. Roads can cause habitat fragmentation, making it difficult for animals to move, migrate, and maintain healthy populations. From large animals such as mountain lions to small ones like newts, we can make a difference by planning for wildlife movement when we design green streets and storm drains, culverts, bridges, and more. In a recent presentation from the California Natural Resources Agency titled Secretary Speaker Series, Crossings Amid Climate Change, California Department of Transportation Secretary Omashakin spoke on the importance of planning transportation with both human and wildlife health and safety in mind. In his comments, he did not distinguish wildlife from people. We are all together. Is it possible to please play the YouTube video I sent to you starting at 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 40 seconds and ending at 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 20 seconds? Thank you.
All right, you have 1:40 remaining, so let's play.
And I serve as our California Natural Resources Secretary, and you are here with us to discuss something both important and really inspiring, and that is building connectivity for our animals in California amidst climate change and so many other stressors. My partner in crime today is Chuck Bonham, who leads our Department of Fish and Wildlife at the state, and who's really spent his career as an environmental lawyer working to build connections
from
for habitat for.
From 1 hour 7 minutes and 40 seconds to 1 hour 9 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yes, thank you. And let me give a request of video as well. Video, reset the time to 1 minute and 40 seconds, please.
Thank you.
Are really excited about the environmental aspects of this, but don't know the work that you're involved in, that you're leading. So give us a little sense of your vision and where you think these different priorities converge.
Yeah, thanks so much. So when it's time for Secretary Crowfoot, when it's time for me at some point, hopefully, to ask Governor Newsom for a raise, I'm just going to take this montage from Bat, you and Chuck, and just hand it to him and say, hey, listen to this. Anyway, thank you guys so much for that. I appreciate that. So it's just my belief that in our industry, that we should be looking out as much as we possibly can. We, the practitioners in transportation, for people. And part of when I say for people, when I say that, part of that means that we're looking out for the wildlife that's very much a part of how we live as well. That those two things are not separate. I know sometimes people, like to look at those things in different worlds, but the wildlife around us is actually a part of us. And as we continue to try to make our transportation system more robust and grow, we need to make sure that we're looking out for the aquatic and the wildlife resources around us as well. It should just be ingrained into how we do our work. I really don't see it as something that's like a special effort. It should just be a part of how we do our business. So as we think about
10 seconds.
Building, for example, for people to walk and bike and so forth, we should be looking to say, okay, what kind of natural resources or what kind of wildlife
thanks very much.
Resources?
Video, please cut, or whoever's controlling that. Our next speaker is call-in user 1, followed by Peggy Griffin and Lisa Warren, and there are no further hands remaining on the Zoom function.
Yes, I guess I missed that one.
I'm sorry, John?
Hi.
Hi, John. Maybe mute your microphone. All right, I did it for you. All right, so call-in user 1, you'll need to hit *6 in order to be heard. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, council members. Actually, I have some write-up about the, I asked for the ombudsman some kind of legal help for the regular city system, because it seemed like the whatever the city attorney or outside, they were just not really on this point to seeing like helping the citizen issues, and also the residents issues. And there's about a matter talking about actually there's no backyard structure accessory at all, and it was about 90-some square foot, 12 feet. The play structure built up shed is not even commercial use, and no neighbor complain, and one even far away from everybody, and far away from the street viewing as well, and only a part a little bit maybe affected, and they're supporting it. So for that structure to torn down and it takes the belonging away, and it's completely unthinkable. It was a second time also. So we started needed the ombudsman, and also they have a sanction on us. Completely is not justified. It just and we also filed a claim, and the earliest time we can find out is this claim even available in the city. So for the outside attorney or whatever claim the city attorney, and we try to clarify what's about, and we didn't have the first letter received. We have about 5 case sanctions, complete unheard of, and we want this motion take down, and we want to apologize. So, and also we need help for the public for to deal with all these matters, because it seems like for the sitting long-term residents in the city, and for the city, whatever they're using the mechanism, whatever they think their attorney or side attorney to this to do the citizen in the city is completely unheard of, and to their own interest as well. And we have a spokesperson, actually, it's a volunteer, especially not a lawyer, but it's 48, let me see, 396 3640. So we need anybody can help us, and that will make the city much better. Instead of suppress, and instead of using the system, try to do whatever the advantage they have, and didn't care about what other bigger structure and the taller structure or commercials, and suppress the citizen like this for their own use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening, council and staff. I just want to thank the council and the city tech staff for allowing our future council meetings and this one to be a mixture of online and in person. This will enable so many more people to attend and participate in our city meetings. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, Peggy. Our next speaker is Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thank you. I agree with Peggy, and I'm glad. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I was barely here on Zoom. So, but I'm glad it's happening. We need in person for lots of things. And I know this may be I don't know if this is the appropriate time to state this, because I want to talk about some consent items that I'd like to see hold, but I don't recall how you do that. So when the opportunity for the public is to do that. So I'm just going to say it right now. And if I'm wrong, tell me to say it later. I think number 22 on consent.
I'm sorry, Lisa, that's agendized. I'll go ahead and ask for members of the public at that point.
Okay.
You do have 2 minutes left in your public comment.
No, that's okay. As I said, I wasn't recalling how we did that, but I didn't want to miss an opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this point, we'll go on to the live blue cards. We have cards from Jennifer Griffin and Kathy Helgerson. And so that we know, Madam City Clerk, was anybody emailing in for oral communications?
No emails, Mayor.
Okay, so Kathy will be our last speaker. Our next speaker is Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be back. I'll echo what Peggy and Lisa said about being able to have the hybrid meetings. I actually did attend the San Jose City Council meeting last Tuesday, and it was hybrid, and it went really well. Shades of things to come. And I'll just speak briefly. I think that Lisa did have a question about pulling the items from consent, how we do that. So anyway, I heard over recently, just a couple of days ago, that there may be new RENA numbers that are coming out of Southern California. There's a group called SCAG, which is in Southern California. I think it's Southern California Association of Governing something or others. I think it's similar to either ABAG. And it appears that in December, there was another analysis of the RENA numbers for the state, and it looks like they were half of what the RENA numbers are that we're saddled with now. I would like to have someone try to investigate that, because if this is true, we should not be proceeding ahead with the RENA numbers that we have now. There is a problem. The cities are spending a lot of money on trying to do the housing elements. This is all, 250 cities across the state, plus the counties. And we have no assurance that HCD will certify us. We have zero assurance. There were only 2 cities in Southern California out of maybe 100 that were certified. Those are not very good odds. Right now, we have situations where Portola Valley is being reamed. They are in a city battle because they're having to rezone individual people's homes with or without their consent. I mean, what has this led us to? We have Mr. Putin invading a neighboring country for various historical reasons. Why is our state allowing entities like HCD to ream every city? What have we done? Nothing. We have survived 2 years of COVID. We have gotten everyone in our families and our friends to get through. We've put up with masks. We've done everything the state has asked us to do. Yet we are saddled and persecuted with everything from these RENA numbers. I am really tired. I want to raise my head up and be proud that I live in this state. I live in Cupertino, but yet again and again and again, we are told we are bad. We have no right to live in our neighborhoods. That stops here. That stops now. If we have new RENA numbers that are coming out of Southern California, we need to know about them. Let's shut this housing element down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are at our last speaker for oral communications. That is Kathy Helgerson. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Okay, I wanted to notify you all, and I sent out my email to all of you. And major thing here is Lehigh Hanson Permanent Cement Plant and Quarry. Their violations will be reviewed in May at Santa Clara County, the Board of Directors. There's another meeting of acquisition, purchasing of the Lehigh land. This has been my dream for 19 years. And I want all of the public that is listening in the City Council to get involved and to do everything you can to help with this. This is major. This will save lives. This will make our community a better place to live. Please help. Now, I also included in my listing Stockmeyer Farmhouse and sheds and property, McMillan Ranch House, Blackberry Farm, Rolling Hills, 4-H Club is in charge of this. The Blackberry Farm animals, disgusting. It's a terrible thing for these animals. Take a look up there for yourselves if you don't believe me. Community garden area, another place we need to help. Stevens Creek corridor next to Stevens Creek is not maintained. The Stevens Creek itself is not cleaned and maintained. The Stevens Creek corridor and the Stevens Creek ridge line, both sides are suffering from erosion, and there are houses up on these ridge lines that are in danger. The city needs to look into this. The pool needs to be reviewed and looked into. The golf course. Do we need a golf course, folks? I don't think so. I think we need housing. The Snyder Hammond home is another home that needs to either be moved or demolished, and it's owned by the Historical Society, and I think the city needs to take charge of this. Please read what I have sent you. I have sent many emails. Roger Lee had many of my emails. We have a new city manager and a new replacement for Roger Lee and Public Works, and I need you all to get involved, and please do something about Lehigh now. Thank you very much for your time and your help.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That concludes oral communications. We are back to our agenda. I believe that we should be on consent calendar right now. Nope, sorry. We're on to reports by council and staff. Item number 2 is brief reports on council member activities and brief announcements. We have 5 minutes allocated for this totally. So everyone just make sure that you remember that it's brief. And so we'll start with, anyone want to take a volunteer basis? Councilmember Moore.
All right, I'll go and I'll try to make this quick, and I'll just mention one thing. On Saturday, I attended the newly returned Big Bunny Fun Run. I did place 3rd in my age group, and myself and Councilmember Way got to help hand out medals to all of the winners. We did get a bit of sprinkles, and there was a rainbow and a 6-foot-tall rabbit for this newly returned event, and it was great fun to see everyone out, especially the kids with their bunny ears on, getting some great exercise, and I want to thank staff and the volunteers for making this a great event. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Anyone else? Councilmember Contacts. Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Pot. I'd like to invite all the city councils and our staff too, if they have time, for the May 18th. The Cal City's Peninsula Division is going to do a information seminar. Actually, we have a speaker from the governor's office to talk about the Care Court program, which is a new program, so it's very informational. And I want to skip the bunny because we had a great time. And I did attend a Zoom that's hosted by Seamless Bay Area with Joint Venture Silicon Valley. It's really a great initiative. They have a vision to coordinate with the 27 transit agencies in the Bay Area to make it a seamless Bay Area. So I think that's a great start. And I want to thank Mayor Paul. I applied to the ABAC's Regional Planning Committee to the Cal Cities City Association of Santa Clara, which you are on the board member, and Mayor nominated me, and I got 100% approval, so I'm on the board. So thank you so much, Mayor.
Congratulations, Councilmember Way. Okay, anyone like to go next? Vice Mayor Chow?
Okay. I'd like to take this chance to clarify some misinformation that has been spreading around by our own council member and school board members because of misinformation from CUSD. I think transparency is important. This slide was shared by CUSD where it says that the claim made by the parents are CUSD did not conduct the 7-Eleven committee before school closure decisions were made. This is 100% correct because the CAC in 2020 was not a Brown Act committee, which 7-Eleven committee should be, and the 7-Eleven committee is required to include 7 categories of community members. And the CAC, although has more members, is not a broader representation of the community. And I have listed out all the legal requirements of the 7-Eleven committee in this table. I will share, and then the best practices of the
10 seconds,
school closure that the CUSD did not follow. I will share this document with city clerk as public record for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Willie, did you have any council member activities or brief announcements that you wanted to make?
I'll pass tonight. If Vice Mayor has a few more seconds, she's welcome to mine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give mine, and let me do this since we're live. About a minute or so, I want to share with everyone what I think is probably the best expenditure of public funds I've seen in my 7.5 years on council. So we've got this, and you might be wondering what in the world the mayor of Cupertino is doing holding up a cooler. That's a cooler I bought for about $50 at Costco. And I brought that cooler with me to a litter pickup along Highway 280. I just want to thank every single one of my colleagues on council for being there. Okay, so we coordinated with Caltrans. I'm not saying that we saved our city $500,000 and then the other parts of the public $500,000, but man, we did a great job on that 280 on-ramp, off-ramp, I should say, onto Deanza Boulevard. VTA was coordinating at the same time. Our volunteers went to the VTA cleanup across the street. And so kudos to VTA for being able to put it together and get that grant. And we didn't get the grant, but we did coordinate with Caltrans directly. I got my $50 back. I'm bringing that back to the city. Hopefully we can do more volunteer cleanups in the future. So thanks very much. One other thing very briefly, I will be attending the Cupertino Historical Society board meeting tomorrow via Zoom. Is there anybody else on council who would like to attend with me? We can take 2, and I've cleared this. Vice Mayor raised her hand. Okay, so I'll send you that Zoom information. Okay, so that concludes item number 3. And I'm sorry for jumping ahead so quickly. I guess I'm just so excited about being back live. Item number 3 is our report on our formal council committee assignments. And so would anyone like to start us off on this? We actually have 10 minutes allocated for this. Councilmember Way.
So I attended the Valley Water Commission meeting. We are in an extreme drought. We have record low rain from January to March of this year, record low snowpack, and record low reservoir levels. So the Valley Water is asking all the cities to step up and, advocate for drought conservation with the public, especially during summer. Outdoor water usage might be high, so they're asking the cities to really step up and ask our residents to conserve water.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councilmember Way, and great public service announcement. Would anyone like to go next on formal council member committee assignments? I see Vice Mayor with her hand raised. Vice Mayor, let me see if you can go next to last if other council members would like to go first. Councilmember Willie? Councilmember Willie?
Yeah, so on the 13th was our monthly Silicon Valley Clean Energy. The highlight is really the 5-year anniversary. So it was 5 years ago that our Councilman Rod Sinks was one of the original members that moved forward with this Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And now, 5 years in, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy that serves everywhere, serves customers that sign up all the way from Morgan Hill up to Milpitas and all around the Bay Area here in our local area, and has reduced over the 5 years, reduced the emissions by 35%, the greenhouse emissions. And they've signed 11 contracts with renewable energy providers. So not everyone signs up for Silicon Valley Clean Energy to be their supplier, but for all those that do, the 7 contracts with renewable power are being provided by these other providers as opposed to the greenhouse gas emissions directly. So 5 years, let's hope that we do that much more in the next 5 and even more. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Woolley. Councilmember Moore, would you like to go next for committee assignments?
Well, all I can do is give you an announcement for next Monday, the 25th, at 11 a.m. We have the CEP meeting for the housing element, and then at 4 p.m. We'll have an audit committee meeting. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah, so on the 12th, I attended the actually the mayor was the assigned attendee. I attended as alternate. And on the 13th, I attended a new Cal Cities Peninsula Division Legislative Action Committee. That's a collection of members who attend the Cal Cities Policy Committee. So it is good to learn what all the 7 areas of the policy Cal Cities are lobbying for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. So a couple of meetings to report out on. Vice Mayor Chow just alluded to it. It's the County HCDAC, that's housing related, and essentially it is the CDBG funding for housing related items. We do that in Cupertino. But this is for county and essentially unincorporated county and people applying directly to that jurisdiction for that funding from the federal government. And so we also had a Cities Association meeting, and we also had a VTA board meeting during that time. And as you would imagine, everybody is working on reopening at this time. I would imagine that my colleagues in VTA have a lot to say about the various legal repercussions of one of the federal decisions that came out from Florida yesterday with regard to mandates for masks on public transit. So a lot of things happening on all fronts. I think they're generally quite positive. Cities Association is going forward. You might have heard some press, some a little bit more accurate than the others, but I would say that with regard to the Cities Association, the big deliverable and reportable item is that there were quite a few committee assignments, and Councilmember Way, of course, was one of those committee assignments. It is planning related, it is ABAG related. Councilmember, very well done. Showing up is not half of success. I think it was really more like 99.99% of success. The other person who applied sent in a 3-line email after the deadline was extended because no one applied for that particular spot and said, if no one else applies, I'm very happy to take it. But Councilmember Way, I was very pleased to be able to see that we have that interest. And I know that your colleagues here on the Cupertino City Council are more than happy to see you take that mantle. And hopefully we can have good discussions on that representation going forward. Okay, so that's what happened at the Cities Association. And so we will go on to our next item on the agenda, that is a city manager update. Welcome once again, City Manager Jim Troop. I hope that live meetings in the city of Cupertino have been everything that you dreamed that they would be up to this point, about an hour, 45 minutes or so into your first one.
Well, I had to get training on how to use all the buttons up here, so I'm hoping I do it correctly. I did this last week, Matt reminded me, but I have Matt Morley, our new Public Works Director, in person. So I don't know if everyone's met him in person and the public here, so I'm going to ask Matt to come up real quick just so you can see he is real and he stands there. Wonderful. So Matt recently served as the Parks and Public Works Director for the town of Los Gatos, where he's been there since 2013. In his role, he managed all operations and capital programs for the town, including facilities, fleet maintenance, park and street maintenance, capital project programming and delivery, and real estate transactions and planning. Matt previously worked for the city of San Jose in a variety of management and leadership positions, including serving as the fleet manager and director of fleet and facilities. So I'm going to just ask Matt to say a couple words and let people know you're real. So.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to be with you all in person and to see everybody in person. It's been a great 2 weeks since I've started. An amazing team that you have here in Cupertino. Great staff that are very dedicated to what they do. It's very apparent to me in just that short amount of time that I've been here. So amazing opportunity. I thank you for the work that we're going to do together. I think there's some great opportunities, and I look forward to being a part of it. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Matt. A couple other ones that are coming up. These are more event-driven. Just a reminder that April 19th, oh, well, we're here. Sorry, I wrote this the other day, that we're going to be in person after 2-year hiatus. So we also have an all-inclusive playground at the Jolyman Park. The city of Cupertino was awarded a grant to replace the existing playground equipment at Jolyman Park with a new inclusive park and playground designed for people of all ages and abilities. The design team will support recreation, social interaction for individuals with autism, sensory challenges, cognitive development, physical disabilities, and those without special needs. We also have, if you'll join us on this Saturday, April 23rd, from 11 to 3 for the Earth Day event. So come on down. It should be a really good event. And let's see, we have the last chance to take the online survey. I mixed these all up. I apologize, Mayor. This is my last week's. Okay. I do have Earth Day. That's the only one. I printed off last week's. Cupertino's Earth and Arbor Day Festival is returning in person this Saturday, April 23rd, 11 to 3 at Library Field. Festivals will feature more than 60 community partners, family activities, live entertainment, a guided bike ride, food trucks. Take a ride on the VIA shuttle to join us. VIA is offering free rides all day in honor of Earth Day. And the festival was moved to Library Field to accommodate better social distancing and more activities. The last one, I just wanted to bring up, and I know it's been talked about before, but just we finished a City Hall project study, and that was the little history. The City Hall back over here was built in 1965, remodeled in 85, but it didn't touch anything on any of the current seismic standards, so it's never been upgraded to that. The report that we got back was the fourth one. We had one in 2011, 12, 14, and then this recent one in 2021. Each of those show structural deficiencies, as noted in the report, indicating the building is likely to sustain major damage, not be functionally operable if a significant seismic event were to occur. In the 86 remodel, the city at that time didn't do anything to bring it into conformance with any of the codes at that time, so it was still operating off the 65 build. The big issue at the time is if something does happen, such as an earthquake, the potential for a roof collapse is there. It goes into this report, which I will pass out, goes into a lot of detail, like talks about the shear walls, load resistance issues, and I know our engineers on council will know all about that. It's above my pay grade. Additionally, the other part has much of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing equipment is well beyond its useful life. Some of it's original from 1965 and is at its capacity. Other age systems include communications, data, IT, accessibility, fire sprinklers, smoke and fire alarms. So we've been researching this, both a renovation and or replacement, but either of these types trigger a need to address the city civic center parking issue. So it's also going to be including discussions of the library parking garage to take care of that. So this will be one of our recommended items in CIP, and that'll come back later to the council for further discussion. Should the council address any of the funding issues, not the full go out and build it, but just more discussion about, okay, more planning items on it. It's going to be at least a year later before we can even bring it back to council at that point, but it's something we should probably talk about again. So I'll have a memo. I didn't get it in time for a desk item. We'll put together a memo, and I'll send that out with the actual report for council's review. And that's what I had.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager Troop. And we'll go on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent calendar. The consent calendar encompasses items 6 through 23. I'm going to go ahead and back up. I do have a live request from Vice Mayor Chow, very rightfully so, because I skipped item 5. And that item, Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Willie have been diligently working on a subcommittee with regard to the Pacific Coast Farmers Market that is held currently in Memorial Park every Sunday morning. And so we are receiving an update on those outreach efforts. Let me ask our city staff or the subcommittee who is going to be presenting on this item to provide the update.
So being the subcommittee, I would say either Vice Mayor Chow or Councilmember Willie.
Vice Mayor Chow or Councilmember Willie, would you, either of you care to provide?
Councilmember Willie can speak first because he has been following this item for the longest time.
Okay, very good, Councilmember Willie. And you have our thanks, both of you, for Vice Mayor and Councilmember Willie for taking on this role.
I'm getting caught a little off guard. Why don't I let Vice Mayor run with that, and then I'll follow up with some comments.
Okay. Let's have Vice Mayor initiate the conversation.
So, yeah, I actually haven't been paying too much attention to this issue until the study session last time. Thankfully, Councilmember Willie has pushed for that study session, and then I have tried to explore different options. We contacted the Fremont Union to see if it's possible to use the Monta Vista High parking lot, and they gracefully agreed to meet with the provider and estimated the cost, but eventually it will be $2,000 a week, right? That's prohibitively expensive. And if there is any extra cost, they will have to raise fees for the farmers, and that then will make things more expensive. Right now, I find out the produce and vegetables in the farmers market actually might be cheaper, fresher than the supermarket. It wasn't like before. So we look at other options. Right now, they hope their best wish is to work with the city. Memorial Park is their #1 preference, and Torrey Avenue, if it's blocked off, it's a second preference. And then thanks to the mayor, we also got in contact with the board president of Foothill De Anza College and the president of De Anza College, and we had a meeting. Both the board president and current president were very supportive of receiving farmers market there. So they are willing to waive parking fees and likely also waive potential need for an additional police officer to be on campus if the Cupertino police could provide some support there. But that we will still try to figure out the detail. We also received a ton of emails from our residents requesting for us to keep farmers market in Cupertino. So we are trying to do that. If anyone has certain preference on whether the market should be at Memorial Park or De Anza College, please write to us so that we know how to proceed. And so we will proceed in both options, De Anza and but right now, the city staff has agreed to extend the permit for another 2 months till the end of June, I think. So as to give us some time to work out the best solution to serve our residents.
Okay, thanks, Vice Mayor. And your other member of the subcommittee, Councilmember Woolley, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll add on a few comments to that. I want to really thank Vice Mayor for really reaching out to FUHSD and also CUSD. But at any rate, if we kind of go back in time to understand what we were really faced with, is that the farmers market was originally over at the Oaks for quite a few years, but then the development that started essentially didn't allow it to continue there. So our previous city manager, about 2 years ago, allowed the farmers market to move to the upper parking lot at Memorial Park. Sounds good. Sounds great. It was only extended or only given that location for several months, and then it timed out. And at that point, the farmers market and the community was faced with what's the future look like. And so at that point is when I was wound up kind of in the middle in between the farmers market and the city manager saying, we need a little bit more certainty. We can't just keep letting it time out and extending it and then extending it. And at that point, then the study session and the subcommittee to truly look at what are the options. And now we do have a couple viable options. We've looked at a lot of options, and that's what will be coming to us for a final decision, I think. So,
One more.
Yeah, let's go back to Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Councilmember Woolley and Vice Mayor Chow.
One more thing. The farmers market had to skip the Sunday when we had the Holiday Festival, even though it's in the afternoon. And so they expressed the interest to see if it's possible for them to coexist with the cherry blossom on May 1st. So I thought we should explore. So I called up the Toyokawa Sister City, the executive director. They are actually very supportive of this idea. And they recognize that farmers market bring in 5,000 foot traffic to their event. So they have worked out an agreement between them that's beneficial for both sides. And so they probably need a blessing from the city staff to make that happen. So we are happy that we will have both farmers market and cherry blossom on May 1st.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. And let me go to our city manager. Did you want to follow up on any of the comments and presentation from the subcommittee?
I would just say that our last meeting, we had Jerry and Steve there from the farmers market, as well as both of the council members. And we also had on, as they said, the president of the college, the board president, and Jennifer, I forgot her title. And it went really well. I mean, the board members and the president said, we want this to be here. We want it on campus. We want it to be here. I mean, they were very excited about having it. So they're going to be doing everything they can. They're going back to their board to talk about waiving some of the fees. I'll be talking to our sheriff to see if they can do a swing through and help with the security. They're looking at future with the new bond issue to do some retrofitting a bathroom, so they have the automatic, like a Wi-Fi open and close, so they can open it and close it for people attending rather than just using porta potties. So it was a very good meeting. I think it was productive, and they're working, through their board. They're working with their legal counsel on getting an agreement and everything going. So I think it turned out quite well.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Jim, and my thanks to the subcommittee. I know we have 100 or more comments from the public through our email, and so this is an extremely well-attended and important facility. And so to our subcommittee. I really appreciate your work on this. It sounds like it's making some significant headway here. I will say I don't have currently, I actually do. I have Peggy Griffin from the public before we bring it back to the dais to speak on this item. And then to our live members of the public, I'll let everyone know that you'll need to submit a blue card to speak before the first speaker is done speaking on Zoom. And same goes for our call-in users on the phone. Please hit, I believe, *9 on your phone in order to raise your hand. And again, if you're wanting to comment in over email and you're watching this during that same period of time while that first person is speaking, please send in your comment to cityclerk@cupertino.org. So our first speaker is Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members and staff. I want to thank Vice Mayor Chow and Council Member Willie for their hard work and the city staff. I want to encourage you. I'm concerned that should the plans to possibly put the farmers market on De Anza not pan out, please make it a priority to have the city take over the space, find them a place, because this is an asset to the community, and particularly in that area where you have the ELI housing coming in, you have a huge number of housing at Westport, and you have the senior center, not to mention the apartments and condos that exist. And that would entice people to walk and get fresh produce. And then the leftovers go to West Valley Community Services. So this is a win-win, and we don't want to lose it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. And I do have one blue card from a member of the public. That is from R. Jerry Lammy. And before we call on Jerry, Madam City Clerk, are there any emails that have come in to speak on this item?
I did have a presentation, Mayor, but I don't see that person with their hand raised. So no,
Okay.
not at this moment.
Okay, so, and I assume that you brought you received the presentation earlier.
I do have it queued up, yes.
Okay, very good. So let's go ahead. Hopefully, if you're looking to present on this item, please raise your hand very momentarily. Jerry, welcome. And I know that you're one of the proprietors of this farmer's market. Great to have you here, and you'll have the 3 minutes to speak. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members and City Manager. I'm the founder of West Coast Farmers Markets. West Coast Farmers Markets were born in Cupertino in October of 2011. We had the pleasure of being in the Cupertino Oaks for 9 years until the construction forced us over to Memorial Park. At that point in time, we started reaching out, trying to find another location. I was also a member of your council committee, and so I've spent a lot of time driving around. I got to meet Miss Polly Bove through that process. Great lady. I toured all the high schools, all the middle schools, and so some of the areas that we saw, other than Memorial Park, suggestions were Torrey Avenue here in front of City Council, Lawson Middle School, and maybe the end of Mary. Pretty much I wanted to also say about our Zoom meeting that we just had with with De Anza, the head people at De Anza College there. Without City Council, I would have never gotten to that level of being able to talk to people. For the last 2.5 years, I was trying to do that. I only got as far as Jennifer Mojado. And so I want to thank City Council for helping me, and they are listening over there. But I also want to reach out to Cupertino and let you know that this is a single-handedly, in my opinion, the biggest community service event that you have on a weekly basis in this town. Right now, during the winter, we're getting upwards of 5,000 people. In the summer, it grows to 7,000 people. And when we looked at smaller elementary schools or smaller parks, there wasn't enough room. in our dealings with De Anza was like an octopus of having all different types of money needs that they needed to have accommodated. They wanted paid parking. They wanted to charge for the parking lot for the market. They have custodians. They have porta potties. There's a lot of different costs that are coming up with, just like the high schools told us $2,000 a week. So the bottom line is that they are researching those. They're trying to make it better for us, but we're not too sure if that's going to pan out or not. In the meantime, thanks to Vice Mayor Chow, we were able to have an agreement with the Cherry Blossom Festival. We're going to try to coexist with the largest festival the city hosts on a yearly basis.
10 seconds.
There, and we're going to make that happen on the 1st, and I thank you for all your time and for all your efforts, and we're still working.
Thanks so much, Jerry.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. All right, so let's take this back to council and the dais. Well, this is an update, and so we are free to provide some direction. I do think that a quick follow-up is probably in order. So with regard to the Cherry Blossom Festival that's happening not this weekend, but the weekend next, April 30th and May 1st. So Jim, does that sound like something that you're familiar with, or is that workable from a logistics-based perspective? I know that Cherry Blossom Festival is quite extensive, and so, and if this is a matter of first impression, completely understood that you would need to go back and check with your staff as well.
For the mayor, just a question on how did it interact? Is that what you're asking about?
Well, does it sound logistically possible to have both the farmers market and the Cherry Blossom Festival at the same time? Because of course that's one of the. Right?
Yeah, I had already talked to staff about that.
Oh, you did? Okay,
and
so that will happen.
The farmers market and the Cherry Blossom group have said yes, that would work. So staff, we're sort of like, well, we have to try it at some point. So
right.
they're going to give it a shot.
Move in the mountains. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
So
sounds great. So any other comments at this point before we go on to? Okay, we have two hands raised. Let's go to Councilmember Way and then Councilmember Woolley.
First, I'd like to thank, Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Willie for your yeoman's work. And also, I really like to thank the staff. I know our staff spent hours and hours on this. We do recognize this is a great service to our residents, and, fresh produce is really, really great. So my comment is, hopefully we can find a more permanent location so that this market doesn't have to keep on moving around. And I do understand why the school district and De Anza need to charge, with garbage cleanup, with, but I think they can waive the parking, but toilet facilities. So there are going to be some certain charges. I'm hoping that this could be compromised so that we can continue to serve our residents and also and have a more permanent place than moving around every few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Boyd and Councilmember Woolley.
So just a couple comments on, the current status. I wish we actually already had all the nails nailed down. It's been a long journey, but we're not quite at the end of the road yet. So with De Anza that we met and everything looks really positive, it's still, they need to go back to the De Anza board and get approval for what they're hoping to provide. And we'll have a meeting in May in that regard. And so the concern that a lot of the community members that have emailed us about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in the near term. But fortunately, the city manager, I think I'm correct in saying, has allowed it to be extended through the end of June, which gives us that crucial time to allow De Anza and the subcommittee to work out these final details with Jerry and Steve and hopefully put together a package that does in fact work. Conceivably would take over in, say, July. So can't get our hopes, or can't get all excited yet that it's a done deal. It's not a done deal yet, and we will learn some more at the Cherry Blossom Festival. And then with all the different pieces of the puzzle, we'll get together and decide what makes sense for the community, for the farmers market, and for the city. So that's where we're at.
Great. Thanks, Councilmember White. And I do hear Vice Mayor Chow. So, Vice Mayor.
I'd like to invite all the council members, staff, and the community members to visit the Sunday farmers market. It's the old-fashioned farmers market that you can actually talk to the farmers. And that's not something we get by shopping in a supermarket. Bring your kids out there. Weather is nice now. So, yeah.
All right, great. Thanks, Vice Mayor Chow. And Councilmember Moore, did you want? Yeah, okay, so let me just reiterate all the thanks to everyone involved here, subcommittee members, Jerry, and our city staff. I think we're all pulling together to do a great job to deliver, fresh vegetables to a lot of our residents and surrounding members of the community. So let's go on at this point. As a live meeting, what I'd like to do is to make sure that we are taking breaks on the hour. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we have that 5-minute break at this point. So I'm reading 7:52. We will reconvene at 7:58 with the consent calendar, which will be items 6 through 23. So we'll see you in 5 minutes. We are on the consent calendar, and that is items 6 through 23. And the question I will ask is whether anybody has items from consent that they would like to pull. I did ask that item 23 be placed on consent. It has to do with the U.S. Mayor's Conference. And so I will go ahead and pull that item and present very briefly on that to give some context. Would anyone else like to pull items from the consent calendar? I do see a member of the public with a hand raised, but I'm going to go to council first to see if anybody would like to pull items. Councilmember Moore?
Okay, so I do want to discuss the payment register. So I'm not sure if I should just pull the whole group and speak about them all in general terms. So that would be 9 through 18, and just have a brief statement about the collection of them. And then I would like to hear about items 21 and 22. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Moore, we'll go ahead and have you pulling 9 through 18 as well as 21 and 22. And would anyone else on council like to pull an item from consent? Okay, and I did see Vice Mayor Chow.
I'm just asking, so if a public wants to pull an item, do they have to fill out a blue card first?
No, I'm going to go to our members of the public next. With
they
regard
don't have to fill out the speaker card.
No, we'll just do a quick check-in for members of the public through hands raised. So I do see a hand physically raised. I see a couple of hands raised on Zoom. We'll go by the same order, Zoom and then live hands. And then let's go to Lisa Warren first, then Peggy Griffin. And this is just a request. Please do not elaborate. If you just want an item pulled, just identify the item and we'll pull it off of consent. Lisa Warren, welcome.
Thanks. So number 24, which Councilmember Moore, 22, which Councilmember Moore has already called upon, but that's what I wanted to say earlier. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And let's go by this. If it's already been pulled, then there's no need to raise your hand at this point. So Peggy Griffin, you're next. Do you have any new item that you'd like to have pulled from consent?
23, if it hasn't been pulled.
23 has been pulled. I pulled that.
Okay.
And so
right.
I did see a hand physically raised here in Community Hall. Jennifer Griffin, and if anybody has a blue card that they wanted to fill out with regard to pulling any items. Jennifer, if you could please go up to the lectern so that members of the public can hear. So the request at this point is to see if there are any new items that anyone would like to pull from consent. Right now we have 9 through 18, 21, 22, and 23 already pulled. Jennifer?
Yeah, I already, I turned in 2 blue cards because I was trying to remember how we did this. It's been 2 years. So yeah, I want to pull number 20, and then I think along 22 also.
Okay, Jennifer, item 20 is the new item, And so we'll go ahead and get to that in order of items that have been pulled from consent. And so please take a seat again. You'll have an opportunity
And
to
then
speak.
I've already turned in blue cards for both 20 and 22.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. And so our first items that have been pulled from the consent calendar are in mass 9 through 18 by Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, would you like to speak to the items 9 through 18 and any comments or questions? I'm sorry. Before we do that, I'm having a hand here from Councilmember Willie. Councilmember Willie, did you want to pull a different item as well from our consent calendar?
No, I thought we would move 6 through 8 before we started the discussion on the pulled items.
Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. And so would you mind adding item number 19 as well, as 19 has not been pulled from consent?
Yes, sorry, I overlooked that. So 6 through 8 plus 19.
Okay, Councilmember Willie moves items 6 through 8 and 19. And Councilmember Willie, I assume it's as described in the agenda for the recommended actions respectively?
Correct.
Okay, great. Would anyone like to second Councilmember Willie's? Okay, I see Councilmember Willie.
I'll second.
Okay, we have
Second.
Councilmember Way seconds, and I don't see any further hands raised to comment on the motion on the dais. Madam City Clerk, let's vote with our lights. I'm gonna have to get out of that habit.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And so we are now on to items 9 through 18 that were pulled as a bulk unit by Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, did you want to speak to items 9 through 18 at this time?
Yes, thank you. Just on item 9, I do have one item that needs to be reviewed, and that's on PDF 60 of the entire packet. And I think it's a relic, but it does mention Angela Sway on that item, so that probably needs to be looked at. And also we had, and this might be from our previous, our interim city manager, but we had discussed changing the name of Junipero Serra Trail and having it, for the meantime, it would say the I-280 Trail. And I believe that's on PDF 107 of the packet. But the whole group, I pulled, there was one payment register which is a little bit different from the others, and that was item 11. And what was interesting to me in there is that there were line items showing where the payments tied into the various items in our city budget. So there's codes that were in this statement, and I don't know if that's something that we want to look for in the future as a council, to have that information provided for each payment register, or if this was just an anomaly that we got to see this information this particular time. So that's one item. And then the second one is that from our municipal code, and some cities do this, follow the state law, and some don't, and I think we do need to follow it. From the municipal code says monthly reports. The treasurer shall make monthly reports which conform to the requirements of Government Code Section 41004. Said reports shall be delivered to the city council, city manager, and made available for review by such other persons who may so request. And then you move on to, under investment authority, we have more reports that are supposed to happen, which the treasurer shall make a monthly report of all such transactions to the members of the city council. Let's see, I actually need to read more of it for it to make sense. The treasurer has the authority to invest or to reinvest funds of the city, or to sell or exchange securities so purchased, and who shall thereafter assume full responsibility for such transactions until such time as the delegation of authority is revoked. The treasurer shall make monthly reports of such transactions to the members of the city council, the city manager, and also make it available for review by such other persons who may so request. So these accounts payable which we received it's a part of what we should be getting for our monthly reports. And there's also a question of what do they mean by monthly reports, because we have accounts payable from February 7th, for example. a monthly report mean in the middle of March, we should expect to see what happened in February, and that now that it's April, we should be seeing what happened in March. So I'm wondering what the frequency of these monthly reports should be, and I'd also like to see, or if council would consider, that we make a subcommittee that would work with staff on a treasurer report formatting so that we can have something that's pretty easy for us to go through each month rather than each one of these separate sections. And I know the audit committee has looked at this issue, and we, at our last meeting, we got our first treasurer's report, but we didn't get the full report, including the investment part. So I'm hoping that makes sense, but my thinking is that we would probably be best served if we make a subcommittee to work these details out and then have these reports come to council in as easily digestible format as possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. I think those are three clear points. I do have a follow-up on your second point. Your first point was pretty discreet. Item 9, PDF on the entirety of the packet, page 60. Angela Tsui, is a relatively minor charge, it's like $8 or $9 or something like that. And your question is whether that's an artifact of history, since, of course, Angela doesn't work for the city anymore. But item 12, with regard to indicators of code section, I did try to pull those pages from the packet, but I wasn't able to find the code sections that you referenced. And so can you point us to a superenumerated page and just give us an example of one of those code sections?
You're asking where in the municipal code is this?
Where in item 12 did you find references to code that you thought weren't in the other items related to accounts payable?
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're talking about item 11 had.
Item 11. Okay.
Yeah. So and what you're referring to.
Okay. And what page are we talking about, or to give
all
us
of
an
it,
example?
All of it. Okay. So if I'm looking at, say, PDF 111, at the top of the page. You have a payment made of $351, and for this particular item, it comes from the cash account designated 100-100. And then next one down, a payment of $621, and it looks like it's put to the transportation fund with a code 270-100-100, and so forth. As you scroll down, you'll see. Here's what it looks like it's being assigned to. This one is the $7,705, and the paying fund is 610, Innovation and Technology. So it looks like it's being assigned to the IT department. So it's 610, 100-100, and so forth as you scroll through. And this is the only. This is the only one in the set which has these notations on it, which I think is kind of interesting. And I've gone through the accounts payable, fairly regularly, and this is the first time I've seen it. I like it. I thought the next one would have these codes as well, but it could be that it's something that just adds a lot of extra information and staff time that maybe we aren't going to be seeing it in the future. But I thought it was interesting to see it.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. And then in your comments, you spent the bulk of the time on compliance with state code. I think that was fairly clear and self-explanatory. So I think for the benefit of the public, let me go ahead and share. I pulled up PDF 108, and I did, I apologize if that wasn't the precise page number, because I did go back and compare. And indeed, that is true. There is a column, reconciled voided date, and these are not code sections. I misheard you, I think. These are actually different accounts within the city. So 610, 100-100, you're talking about the cash and investments, assets, cash account. So you're just indicating that in this accounts payable document, this information is here, but in the other accounts payable documents, you haven't seen it either in this batch that we have here today on tonight's agenda or previously. So just to clarify, from my understanding of your comments, thank you for bringing that forward. Would anyone on staff like to speak to any of council members' Councilmember Moore's comments. And I think, again, that there are three. There was a specific question about PDF page 60, superenumerated, identifying an employee that's not there anymore. Second question, that particular, itemization. Personally, I think that's probably just a button to click, and if that information is, useful, I think it's probably, readily added, I would imagine. And then third is the question of code compliance with state code and the monthly treasurer's report. Would anyone like to speak? Either the city manager. We do have our director of admin services here as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask our admin services director, Christina.
Okay, welcome. Welcome, Christina, Director Alfaro.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to be back in person. It was a little awkward, but I'm going to do my best here. So in regards to the first item that Councilmember Moore brought up, that is just something that we missed. It is an old, probably a phone line that used to belong to Angela has transferred. We just haven't simply updated the name related to it. In terms of the Junipero Serra Trail, that is something we could make sure we're monitoring to make sure we have that named properly when we are doing bills. When it comes to the compliance, Councilmember Moore is correct that we did start bringing the treasurer's report. I think there's just a little bit of confusion because there's two treasurer's reports, one that's specifically about investments, the second one that's about receipts, disbursements, and fund balance, which is the one we had not been bringing forward prior. The investment report does come to audit on a quarterly basis, and I know the code says monthly, and I don't have a good answer because it was before my time when they moved from monthly to quarterly, but that would be what we get for our quarterly investment reports. But we don't currently bring them monthly. If that's something we wanted to change to be in compliance with the code, that's something we could definitely work with our investment advisors to get those in on a monthly basis versus quarterly. When it comes to AP reporting as well, what we really strive for is to bring you a whole month at once in the month following those transactions closed for the second council meeting. So, for example, this evening, we would really be wanting to only bring you all the March APs. And unfortunately, with the transition of staff, we just fell behind and didn't get the February ones in the last meeting in March. But going forward, that is what our goal is finishing up, bringing you a whole month together. And that's why we do it on the second meeting that the council has, because by the time the first meeting comes around, we haven't closed everything out yet in that first month. And I think I may have gotten everything. Did I miss something?
Any follow-ups at this point before we open it up to the members of the public? Vice Mayor Chow.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore, for looking into accounts payable every meeting. I usually don't do that, but then I have a question because I have asked for the invoice for the EMC consultant. So is that included in this accounts payable? Because the invoice that I got is not itemized as to like the kind I have seen from the city attorney's office when we had the contract city attorney, or the city attorney from the 60 Cities Association. It's every 15 minutes they talk to this person on this topic, and 30 minutes working on this report. But the invoice that I got from, let me share that, is only a total number of hours spent by a certain person over the entire time, but we don't know what they are working on for that entire time. So is that typical? So is this, or is there more detailed information as part of the accounts payable? I'm not familiar with the process, so I am not sure if this is even the right time to ask.
I see our city manager has a hand raised, and so I think the question is essentially how is this particular payment reflected in the batch of accounts payable that we have in front of us?
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor Chow. So the way, and I have my esteemed colleague here next to me, the city attorney, the way attorneys do it is much different than anyone else because they are doing it some are doing it in 10-minute increments, some are doing it in 15 increments, as you said. This case, how we look and see these consultants, this is a typical one. This is how I've always seen it, with the exception of being the city attorneys. They do do it a little differently than everybody else. And part of that is the attorneys are also looking at it to do billable hours to different areas. So if our city attorney here was a contract attorney, they would also be looking at, okay, I talked for 20 minutes about public works, streets. I talked for 20 minutes over here about recreation facilities. So we have to know as a city where to book those costs versus like the example that was put up here, that's the consultant about that one project. So it's not, there isn't a need to break that out, and that's how it typically is on the different contracts.
But we are paying them by an hourly rate of, say, $250 an hour for someone, or $150 an hour for someone else. So shouldn't we have a more detailed account of how much the time is spent on which part of the project, especially when a project is pretty big, a $1 million contract?
Again, it's not a typical way to do that. The attorneys do it so we can do the billing and posting of the billing. This one, it's all under one item. It's not a separate item. So like this example, EMC, it's all about the housing element. It's not.
Then is it possible to request a more detailed itemized list? I am assuming they have that list. They just gave us the summary of a total.
I don't, well, I'd have to find out, but my experience has been that this is how they track their time, and they put it as a whole. But
I see that the city attorney had a hand raised, so let me call on Chris.
Yeah, I would just request that we return to the agendized items that we're discussing, which is the accounts payable reports.
Right. I think that Vice Mayor Chow's basic question was, how is that reflected on the accounts payable, if at all? Which was, are these payments reflected?
These are not.
They're not reflected.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a different request that had come through that we pulled those invoices.
The invoice would, if the invoice were paid, it would be listed on the accounts payable.
Yeah.
But the accounts payable, you see, the level of detail there is not. I mean, we're not talking about the subject matter of the invoice.
Okay. So to the extent that it is not reflected, it just wasn't paid out to this entity, is what you're saying?
No, well, the invoices that the Vice Mayor requested, I don't know if Christine happened to know.
Maybe they're not due, or maybe
they're not
just
part
didn't
of
get paid
these plans, because it was how much have we paid them since the beginning. So they might have been previous ones.
Okay. So to the extent that there are payments reflected, that's basically what was paid out to this particular entity.
Right.
We
receive those. That's the invoice that we receive, and we pay off. That
Okay,
invoice.
got it. So point taken about pulling back from itemization discussions on, a particular project. So, okay, well, let me go to our member of the public with a hand raised on this item. So, Councilmember Moore, I'm just going to consider this items 9 through 18 for this particular discussion, and so. And I'll check in briefly with Chris. That's fine, right? I don't have to take them one at a time in sequence.
That's correct. We can consider them together
Okay.
for purposes of deliberation and public comment.
Okay, great, thanks. So we have a hand raised from Lisa Warren, and I'll just remind all members of the public, our order is going to be hands raised on Zoom, live blue cards, and then any emails to the city clerk at cityclerk@cupertino.org during the time that the first person is done speaking. Although, as I say that, the hand is no longer raised from our member of the public. Madam City Clerk, do we have any blue cards in from the members of the public here for items 9 through 18?
No, Mayor.
Okay. So let's bring it back to the dais. I'm happy to take a motion at this time or have further deliberation before we have a motion. Councilmember Moore.
I just wanted to add, with regards to the government code, section 41004, that the monthly report would include all receipts, disbursements, and fund balances. And then there's the second part, which talks about the investment report. So going back to my original request, I think that having a subcommittee look at the format could be particularly helpful, and to look at some of the formats used by cities around us. And I did find a grand jury report from 2011 and 12 from the county of Solano. And for that particular county, they reviewed all the cities within it, and not a single one was doing their treasurer reports. And so it needed to be remedied, which is what happened as a result of their, it was a grand jury report of the treasurer functional review.
I appreciate that, Councilmember Moore. And at this point, I can see two potential courses of action. We could either require this before approving accounts payable, and or we can just approve this as requested in the agenda and then provide direction to staff. One thing I will say before I ask for a motion or propose one is that I think for a lot of this, we don't necessarily want to go by an example that required a grand jury to be convened. And so I thank you for, alerting us to that. It's, very important to be in compliance with code. This is a state requirement. It's longstanding. And I will say that I know that's, there are a lot of requirements, but it is a good idea if working for our city, especially in critical capacities, to look over job descriptions. And, I'll just use a positive example. I know when our city clerk was promoted to the current position, our city clerk, Kirsten Squarsha, she did look at the description of the job requirements and made note of several things that we were actually not doing as a city. And so that's something that I think is a really great example to be looking at. And so I'm open either way. I mean, these accounts payable have been made. It's not something that, I feel is really comforting to know that we're being asked to approve accounts payable after they've already been paid. But at the same time, if we're operating largely in the realm of the symbolic, I think it also makes a lot of sense if that's within our purview, or if that is what's in our purview, to also, in a similar vein, symbolically say, hey, look, we get compliant with state code. It's longstanding. It's not as if it just happened, yesterday or even 5 or 10 years ago, before we approve further accounts payable. And so I would also suggest, to my colleagues on council, that because we do have a couple of members of our council on the audit committee and familiar with these issues, that we basically, retain the same people. That would be Councilmember Moore and myself on the audit committee, to see what we can do to work with staff to see what is deliverable on a regular basis. And, again, this is, very, very specific information. Of course, we're a relatively young city, 67 years old. And you can imagine in 1955 what it was like to have something like a bag of receipts, right, and kind of culling through it. But of course, we're in 2022 in Cupertino. It is certainly not a bag of receipts, and we have a lot of things going on. But, by the same extension, it's nice to be able to provide a mechanism to the community that people can really know on that basis, how is the money being spent, a little bit more information regarding how the money is going from this account to that account. I mean, that's not a bad thing at all, frankly. And if we had a better handle on that, then we probably could have, avoided some things that we've experienced in the not too recent past. So, Councilmember Way, you have a thought on this?
So I have two questions. It's interesting to know that most cities don't comply with that government code. So I wonder if that code is outdated or it's just impractical to perform. That's just my first question. Maybe the staff and city manager can comment on that. My second question is, now we're in the digital world, so it might be easier to put everything on digital and have it on the website, have a monthly report instead of, because it's time consuming, right? We want our staff to do a good job. We want to be informed, to be transparent, but we also want to find a way for our staff to do their work and not to spend on busy work. So I would like to see if there is a way we can work with the staff and get that report, but in a digital form so that it's not so overwhelming for the staff to do. That's just my two comments.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councilmember Way. And I will make a comment. We don't know that most cities are not in compliance with our state. Right, so Councilmember Moore's example was Solano County. It was just one county. And the grand jury that convened in that county found out that most cities in that county were not in compliance. So, yeah, maybe for staff. So let me visit on your second comment before we go to staff to answer that. I mean, I wouldn't consider it, personally, I wouldn't consider it busy work to know how the, money of the city is being spent. I mean, this is the public dollar, and it's also a matter of how things are being classified and basically, moved from bucket to bucket. And so, I'd be very much interested in getting more transparency into the process here. But let me open it back up to staff. Anyone care to comment on Councilmember Way's question and commentary?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Way. I would just say there has been changes. As the Mayor said, we don't have the bag of receipts like we used to, and that is true. That's what a lot of these reports came from. And I forgot because I didn't print it out today. We're having our budget and bites coming up. I don't know if I took that away from Christine or not, but it's actually showing people how to get on our OpenGov so they see, because all this information that we're delivering, you can go see it on the website. So it's unlike the old days where you had to physically wait for a report and then check it out. You can go out there and check it, and it's daily update. I mean, do you want to talk about the?
It's updated on a regular basis. I don't know that it's daily. We always like to double check
Before
that
it
everything's going in correctly as well. So,
but it is out there. It's able to be looked at. So the one I think is more important actually, because all the accounts payable can be seen on our computer. Anybody can go in and see it. The treasurer's report that deals with the investments to me is a bigger one, because you're having $165 million. I forgot the number. You want to know where that's going. You don't want to end up having it going in the wrong place. You want to see, is it getting as much interest as we can? That one to me is the more critical one, and we do that quarterly right now. I guess we could do it monthly, but that's the one that that's our savings account. You want to make sure that that's going well. I forgot which council member I talked to was back in the day when Orange County went bankrupt because of how they invested. That we can't do that anymore, which is great. No city can. But as a council, you still want to make sure the money is in a safe investment, that it's safe, it's liquid, we have the ability to get to it. That's the more important one. I don't know if.
The only thing, two things I would add to that is I know when Councilmember Moore brought up the 4100 code section, we did go research to try to understand what other cities were doing, and what we found is a lot of other cities weren't, or they'd provide us their treasurer's report, but it was really the investment report, not the one with receipts, disbursements, and fund balance. So when we did a little bit of research, put it out on the State of California Finance Officer's site for the hits that we got, the very few hits that we got back, half of them were related to the other reports. So I'm not quite sure why that's happening. I have a theory that because when you think of, if you work in the finance realm and you think of treasurer, that's investments. When you think of fund balance, right, you're thinking more of finance, budget. And so the way that the code section is written, where you need receipts, disbursements, and fund balance, those three don't actually go together. It should be receipts, disbursements, and cash, or revenue, expenditures, and fund balance. So that's my working theory, but I don't know that to be true or not. So just want kind of my 2 cents on that there may just be some confusion around it. In terms of getting it digitized to the website, we can look into that. I think I recall when we first hopped on to OpenGov, so the financial transparency portal, that there might have been an investment component that we just didn't take up at the time. We were really looking more to build out the revenues, expenses, fund balance portion of our OpenGov site, but that's something that we could look at that potentially could digitize it and kind of have it there in that same more digestible, click and go format. So that's something we could look into.
Yeah, I'll go before you, Vice Mayor Chow. I apologize for talking over you, and I know as the chair of the meeting, I should allow more talking, but I have to very respectfully completely disagree with that characterization of dichotomies of the treasurer, because I take myself back to 1955, and when you have this in the general law in the state, and they have treasurer, to me it means all things money. And so if you're basically kind of trifurcating this and saying, well, this is investments and there's disbursement, I completely disagree. I think the treasurer's role is a financial role. It's an investment-related role. I think it's one that relates to money. I think it's more accurate to say that over time, it has become a much more broad-based and nuanced kind of role. I don't agree with the idea that, you can go ahead and bifurcate out like certain pieces of information. And I'll tell you, let me just be really explicit about it. If members of the public were aware that Jennifer Chang was creating dummy entities, okay, inside of our finance department and was taking, the money from particular development accounts and putting them into, these particular entities, that level of granularity that is required by the state code would have been caught much earlier. Okay, I'm convinced that if you have that granularity to the public, because you have so many more eyes on it, and I think that I don't want to say that it is the onus of every treasurer or person in that position in the city, but if you look at the state code, my interpretation of it is that a treasurer, back then when the general law was created, has to do with things money. And so I think that in order to really be accurate about this and be compliant with our requirements, we shouldn't be trying to carve out various areas that didn't exist back in 1955 and say, this is actually not treasurer related. I think if you go back to the intent, you're going to find that this is essentially a monetarily related thing. That being said, I think we should work with our staff, of course, to try to get that information out there. But there are high stakes here. Just because, and City Manager Troop, I agree that it's a bigger pot of money in the investments, absolutely. But when it comes to the idea of transparency and oversight, is it more or less important? I don't think it's any different. I think we need to be able to have that information on a regular basis. And so let's do what we need to do in order to get that out there. Budgets and bites, and Christina, I don't think you'll disagree with me, that came out as a suggestion that I made roughly 5 years ago. And so we went ahead, and congratulations and kudos to your department for getting that award. It's not updated on a daily basis. Members of the public have asked, hey, how come this is dated information? They say, well, we're not quite updating. So let's get it up there. Let's get that information up there. Let's get it out there on a monthly basis to the extent that we can. But of course, we're not going to try to, make this, so incredibly onerous that our city functions can't go forward. To the extent that we can get that information out there and it exists. And I know you have a lot of information at your fingertips with regard to the software that you use. Let's share it. There's no reason not to share it, is the way I think of it. And I also think of it similarly, City Manager, that, if we have it available, why not put it on, our online mechanisms? But that information is not all out there. It's not, as a member of the public looking at Budget and Bites, all the information that's available to our finance director, our treasurer, if you will, is not available to the public. So to the extent that we can make it available, let's go ahead and put that information out there.
So it's available at the account level, but the detailed level and the invoices in the background that we can get to is not.
Exactly. So Vice Mayor, you had a comment.
So I think Councilmember Wei has has a point that we are at the digital age. Right now, I'm seeing this PDF after PDF. It's very hard to search. But I understand OpenGov actually has a lot of information. So you are saying all of these accounts payable is on OpenGov. For example, I just randomly, I see San Jose Water Company. So is there a capability there I can see what are all the accounts payable related item for San Jose Water Company or like TPX Communications? Is there a capability to do that digital search so that this PDF file is available in a more accessible format?
So this specific PDF file is run out of our financial system. OpenGov currently does not have it to this level of detail. So it's one level above where you can see, let's say, anything in a materials account, but you can't go deeper to see if there's $500 charged to this account. What are all those charges that make up, which would be in the accounts payable. So to Councilmember Moore's earlier point, having that, we call it a GL string, where it shows the fund, division, account, that could be a tieback where you could see where did that expense go to which account, but currently it's not at that detailed level, so you can see all of the AP items within that specific account.
I guess, for example, San Jose Water Company, is there a way to say how much we are paying them a year? Is there a way, or a month? on like 6 months? Is there a way to find out?
You could see what we've paid in water overall to, so that would include Valley Water, right? So Valley Water, there's different water entities. Sorry, I'm not remembering them right now. So there is,
Cal Water is what you're
thank
thinking.
you. Yeah. There is a water account that you could look at and see that, but you can't get to the detail of which vendor has we've paid which amount to. That next level down does not currently exist.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Alpha. Before I call on you, Councilmember Moore, just to clarify, you have access to that next level down, things like invoices and itemized, contracts, for instance, but we don't get that on, say, Budget and Bytes or the online platforms available to the public.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Councilmember Moore.
Okay, so going back to having a subcommittee, I think that would really help, and it sounds as though that there is some interest in doing that. In the first screen share, which you did, the code like 610 is for the IT department, and it's directly in the budget. If you flip through, there's that same code notation, so you know which department that it's going to, and. One thing that I found kind of difficult in looking up who we had paid our monies to was that for our city records, I needed to go to resolutions, and so city council resolutions, and then type in whatever company it was. So if you wanted to know what we had paid EMC, you could type in EMC, and then it'll pull up for the resolutions which have our accounts payable in it. But I found that to be, it was fairly cumbersome, and I did a few searches looking for certain entities which we had been paying. And one actually was, I did a public records request, and I didn't end up finding invoices associated with payments which were made, which I found pretty troubling. And we'll get to that later on for another agenda item. But I don't see that every single one of these payments is having an actual document entity associated with it. For instance, I mentioned a verbal contract, which had no documentation associated with it, and to this day, I have no idea what the verbal contract was, who made it, and how can the city argue if we didn't get what we thought we were, if no one knows what this contract was. And that, when we get into the procurement portion of this meeting, I can bring that up again. But from the audit committee's standpoint, I think that the report should go to them first, having the accounts payable first go by the audit committee members for a first look through, so that there's a second chance before it gets to city council. For instance, the drone item that I pulled a few months ago resulted in city council approving drone use policy. It would have been a little bit easier and less pressure for this council had the audit committee had a chance, and then we have 3 other people who have this experience in accounting who can probably go through the paperwork a lot faster than I can and pull stuff out. So it would, I think, benefit us if the audit committee had the whole accounts payable and this report, the entire report, actually go to them first for a quick look, and then it comes to city council. And I did mention something regarding policy about what is it meant by a monthly report? Do we have an expectation that we are going to get a report every single month, on time throughout the year, and that it'll be the time period closing either the previous month or 2 months prior, giving staff the time to put everything together. But we don't have any policy about how this is supposed to happen now. So it could say a monthly report, and you don't have to deliver it, a February monthly report, until December, because we have no policy that says otherwise.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and make this motion. I move that council create a subcommittee to examine the monthly treasurer's report requirements and bring that back to the council at our next regularly scheduled meeting. For items 9 through 18, I am not suggesting in this motion that we move the recommended action. So let's see where we can get in 2 weeks, and then hopefully that can help us move along. May I have a second for this motion before making a brief comment? Councilmember Moore?
Second.
Okay, and this, it may just turn out to be this. It may turn out to be that the stewards and the oversight functions of our public simply have access to that information. And Christina, Director Alfaro, I've never had the experience where that information was not forthcoming, especially in 2018 when I was meeting with you and your second in command, so to speak, in the department on a weekly basis to go over every single one of these. And I was asking the exact same types of questions that Councilmember Moore was asking. Now, as things go, of course, 2 years went by and now we're here again. I was mayor last year, I'm mayor again this year. And I don't think that we had those weekly meetings to go over accounts payable and get that access. Maybe it's a matter of, as Councilmember Moore is describing, having the oversight functions of the public be able to access this information, and perhaps the audit committee is the right place to do it. But let's look into what's deliverable, and before we start approving more of the accounts payable, I think we can wait 2 weeks and see how far we can get. Let me ask a quick question of staff, however. Are there any legal repercussions, since these accounts of these payments have already been made, to the accounts payables being formally approved, that we might not be anticipating at this point? I don't think that there are any, frankly, since the payments have already been made. But if you see any, of course, I think that might inform the motion that's on the dais at this point.
So, thank you, Mayor. No, I know of no, because like you said, they've already been made. This is just the approval process for them. If you have questions, like we have right now, for the discussion. But the other one, I do think 2 weeks might be really close, just considering when we have to get it back on the agenda. I don't know if we'll have enough time to get it done. And
it's a one-week turnaround. Let's see what we can do. And then if we need to put this on postponements, we'll put it on postponements. Okay. Yeah. And, I don't mean to be a little bit too, taskmaster-ish about it, but I think that might help motivate, movement. Let's go to Vice Mayor Chow, then Councilmember Wei.
So I thought Councilmember Moore also request for accounts payable to go to the audit committee first in the future. So that's not included in the motion. So do you intend for maybe the subcommittee would come back with a recommendation?
I do. I intend for that part of the Treasurer's report subcommittee to consider the scope of our discussion here this evening and to come back with recommendations, hopefully in the next meeting. But if we need to put it on postponements and consider it on May 17th, then that's perfectly fine. Councilmember Wei?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. I have a question because I really don't want to read this again. I read it carefully. So if it's not, I think the answers to Angela Sweet's account has been answered. I think we're looking at the procedure of future, what staff will recommend and work with our council members. How do we move forward to have the monthly report, whether it goes to the audit committee first? I would really prefer to approve these so that it doesn't come back again, because we're going to have another account payable, a lot of them coming up next month too. So is there any way we can approve this but have the motion to, really work on the solutions? I think.
Yeah. So Councilmember Wei, so 9 through 18, that's 10 items. And so we can keep those items on consent next time. And then there is another item that we've created, the subcommittee's report. And so I think the subcommittee's report could be, extended out. I'd just like to see what can happen in terms of our conversations. And so I would ask for one cycle, especially given that there are no legal repercussions, to see what we can do. But you have my commitment that I will try to move these particular items forward at that point. And then maybe we can take the next batch of items and say, look, let's keep on moving on this, since it's so important to keep that steward-based eye on the public dollar. Okay. So great. See head nods and a hand raised by Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I did have one item I would like clarified, and it was PDF 136, and I'm sorry to mention this time, but it said grounds irrigation replacement settlement, and when I read the word settlement, it makes me think of a legal settlement, and it was $51,000 to, I think it's pronounced Ewing Irrigation Products Incorporated. So I can get the answer to that offline. But I just wanted to bring it up because the word settlement was kind of a red flag for me.
I don't see the word settlement on that, Councilmember Moore. Is that, let me go ahead and share that.
Under the description?
Let me just go ahead so that people have a frame of reference for what we're discussing here.
I hope I got that. It's 136 of 632.
136, okay.
I'm sorry, I think I said the wrong one.
Okay, give me one moment so that people have a record of this. So 136, oh, this is 130. Okay, I do see the Ewing Irrigation Products Incorporated, 51,000 right here, 320. Where's the settlement?
Description, the next, you have a solid line, and then you've got grounds, irrigation, replacement settlement.
I see, grounds, irrigation, and that refers to the 51,000. Okay, so we'll take that as a follow-up inquiry as to what that is, basically. I have a thought on what it might be, but I'm not 100% certain. So I'll go ahead and stop the share. Okay, well, thank you for that inquiry. Let's go ahead and call a vote on this item. Madam City Clerk.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And we will go on to item number, I believe, let me see if 19 was pulled from our consent calendar. It was not. We approved it. Okay, we're on to item number 20, which a member of our public, Jennifer Griffin, pulled. Jennifer, would you like to come up and briefly let us know the reason that you requested this item be pulled from our consent calendar? And let me go ahead and read the subject here. This is consider adopting a resolution of local support authorizing the filing of an application for funding assigned to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, committing any necessary matching funds and stating assurance to complete the project for the One Bay Area Grant, or OBAG, Cycle 2 grant application for the Stevens Creek Boulevard Separated Bike Lanes project. Jennifer.
Yes, I just wanted to start out with this. I had a couple of concerns. For one thing, MTC is involved, and I would not trust them with anything based on what's going down with the housing element. I'm sorry. But I'm just wondering what the plan is for the bike lanes. Okay. Apple originally started this out by having a grant. They provided money available to put in some bike lanes from Tantau to Wolf on the east side of Cupertino. This has been, again, the east side. Thanks to Apple, now we have some bike lanes that have been put in on the east side of Stevens Creek Boulevard. It has, good and bad, it's caused me, I just drive down the middle lane now completely because I'm afraid to turn right on Wolf. Traffic backs up. I understand we're working on having signals, et cetera, but I understand now too we're planning on having the bike lanes go down Dianza Boulevard. So I guess now at some point, what is the plan for the funding? Apple obviously is not providing funding for the rest of Stevens Creek Boulevard, which will take this, I'm going to call it a monstrosity, from Wolf past the Valco Rise all the way down to probably Foothill Boulevard. And then eventually, are we going to be trying to get funding to finish this on Stevens Creek Boulevard from this MTC grant? Then what about, then who's going to pay for the bike lanes down Dianza Boulevard? Are we going to get another grant for MTC? Is Apple paying for it?
Okay, Jennifer, I think we get the gist of your concerns and reasons.
And I don't know how much time I have left because there's like one.
Well, I was just asking for a brief reason for pulling it.
What is the plan for this? Yeah. And also, are we beholden to MTC if we accept this money? I am so hands-off MTC at this point.
Understood. And I'll just remind you, because this is an item, you also have the 3 minutes to speak in public comment. So that I think that kicks us off for some questions.
Let me ask you a question. So
Yes.
I can come back again and speak for 3 minutes?
Well, you're the person who pulled the item off, and so I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain why.
Because I know
this is, you know.
sometimes they have staff reports on the item.
Right. Right.
Okay, so I
So
do
I was
you want
hoping
me
that
to-
you could help to kind of steer,
Do
some of the.
you want me to speak
yeah.
again later?
Yeah, this
during-
is a
okay,
mechanism to
then
help
I'll
to
just
shorten
sit
the
over-
staff report, essentially. Okay, so welcome Matt Morley, our Director of Public Works. With your leave, City Manager Troop, I'd like to go ahead and hand the mic over to Matt, because I'm assuming that he walked up here a minute ago to
Thank you,
speak to
Mayor.
this item.
Thank you. It's great to be here. These are funds that are going to a project that's already been approved through the capital improvement program and already funded by the town, so it's offsetting some costs.
City. You're in a city now.
Thank you, city.
Sorry.
A slip that I'm sure I'll make again. I'm sorry about that.
I've been calling for roll call votes, so totally fine.
It's a good opportunity to take money from other sources to bring other money into the city to fund our projects. We did work closely with VTA to bring this money to Cupertino. The dollars were unallocated from another jurisdiction and moved to Cupertino. So it's funds that by being on the ball and being ready with our projects, we're able to capture. So it's a good opportunity to round out funding on this project. The project was a #1 top tier priority in the bike plan that was done in 2016. So it is a high priority for the community, and we're anxious to continue to move it forward. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you very much, Director Morley. And I will give you credit for your former town allocation assignment. Los Gatos actually had much more of that money that had been unassigned, and I think that probably goes to your credit as well for your efforts while you were at that town. And so I'll go ahead and bring this to our City Council. Are there any questions of Director Morley before I bring this to members of the public for any comment on item number 20? Councilmember Moore.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul.
And clarifying questions of the presentation.
Clarifying question. Okay, so I'm looking in the fiscal year 2021-22 CIP budget, and for the Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 Bikeway Phase 2 design, the total budget is $350,000, and city funding is $350,000. And it mentions that it says it's the second phase of a 3-phase program to design and construct separated bikeways from the east city limit to Foothill Expressway. This project funds design only and will result in a shovel-ready project and detailed estimate, which will better position the city for grant funding in the future. And that's what you're talking about here with this part. What I don't understand from this report, and I kind of would have liked to have seen a map. I don't understand how far down Stevens Creek Boulevard this is going to go, and I actually, when I read this one line in here, this project was found to be categorically exempt from CEQA. As bike lanes previously exist within the same right-of-way of the project. I personally kind of disagree with this categorical exemption. I'm just going to put that out there because of what happened at the Wolf and Stevens Creek Boulevard intersection, making it, they got rid of turn lanes, which people were using for drivers, and significantly changed the intersection. Which I don't personally think that actually qualifies. So if somebody wants to comment on that particular categorical exemption and explain that to me, I'd like to hear it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, before we bring it back to staff, Councilmember Moore, so I know the intersection you're talking about, you're basically talking about southbound Wolf and you're taking a right onto Stevens Creek. It's very different, I agree, but what about it makes it environmentally different? That would qualify it for more analysis.
You're changing traffic patterns.
Traffic patterns, okay, fair enough. We'll take it back to staff.
Thank you very much. So a couple of items in there. In terms of the scope of the project, the project will ultimately, through all of the phases, continue on to Highway 85, so Stevens Creek Boulevard to Highway 85, through multiple phases as identified. Our CIP dashboard has each of the individual phases with a map, so it's easy to follow along there. including the funding allocations. There's about $2 million allocated for construction of the project, and this money will go to Phase 2B, which is sort of the next little stretch that will be go into construction next summer, so in about a year from now. In terms of the residents' concerns about obligation, strings attached, I think that's probably one of the things I should cover. We have only to obligate the funds, and the obligate the funds means that we would say, yes, we'll use them for construction, so pretty straightforward from that perspective. In terms of CEQA and CEQA requirements, we have a pretty straightforward check sheet that we're able to follow that takes us through CEQA requirements with the new focus on multimodal transportation and vehicle miles traveled. The world has gone away from looking at bike ped improvements as being CEQA impacts, and so this one certainly falls into that category. It does obviously in situations like that at Wolf and Stevens Creek change the dynamics a little bit, but from a greater CEQA perspective, it does meet that requirement. We do file with the county for these, so there's an opportunity for folks to review it and to object should they need to or want to, and we had no objections on this project.
Okay, let's take this back. Councilmember Moore briefly before we go to Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. I'm curious what we can anticipate to have happen at the Stevens Creek Boulevard and De Anza intersection with regards to these protected bike lanes, and are we going to see something significant for changes at that location as well? Thank you.
Okay, crossroads of Cupertino, Stevens Creek and De Anza, Old Highway 9. So what's going on there?
Yeah, the model is similar along Stevens Creek, so same type of intersection, same type of treatment. I will say that I was out last week at the corner of Wolf and Stevens Creek to look at that intersection with staff. There are continued modifications going on there to help make the intersection work in a better way, help traffic flow. So some of those changes I think will impact the traffic and how it's flowing. And those will be carried on once they're proven at that intersection into the De Anza intersection.
I just want to mention, thank you, Mayor Paul. In the past month, I've only seen one bicycle using the protected lane. So at some point, if it's possible that we could get a traffic use count, I think that might be valuable.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. Let's go to Vice Mayor Chow.
Hi. So the item mentioned committing any necessary matching funds and stating assurance to complete the project. So we are getting $2 million grant for the construction. How much the city needs to match to complete the project? Would that amount be sufficient to complete the entire length of Stevens Creek? And does that include the intersection improvement?
Yeah, so the amount of the funding that we're getting from MTC is $807,000, and that's offsetting a portion that we've already received, that we already have committed to the project. So the project is fully funded through combination of funds. This offsets the portion that we had already contributed to the project. So it actually is a win for us.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor.
One more thing.
Oh, questions at this point? No comments. Questions. Clarifying
Okay,
questions.
so my understanding is with the right term only lane, that we are reducing 3-lane traffic to 2-lane traffic. I think that affect the level of service, that the delay in those intersections. We don't see them now because the traffic is not so bad. So does the CEQA exemption include the consideration for level of service, which I think our general plan does consider?
So I think we're getting into a little bit different discussion on sort of scope of the project. But if you look at, there's a couple of points here to make. One, we have put back the through lane at Wolf and Stevens Creek, so that traffic dynamic has changed a little bit. So that's one of the adjustments we made, and we'll continue that on through the project. The other is the consideration of level of service when you're looking at CEQA, and the state is moving away from that, so that we're looking now at vehicle miles traveled instead of level of service. That doesn't mean that level of service isn't important. I think it's important from a local traffic flow perspective, and we need to keep an eye on that. but it does take it out of the CEQA conversation.
Right, and just very quickly on that, LOS is still allowed in general plans, and so, like you say, it is an important part of the local conversation, so explicitly.
Sorry.
Clarifying question?
Does this include intersection? You didn't answer.
Okay.
So is it only separate bike lanes or include intersection along the way, like Sterling, Stevens Creek?
Yep, it includes the intersections as well, yes.
Oh, great.
Great. So are members of the public, are there any hands raised on Zoom? Let me take a quick look here. All right. I see one hand raised from Lisa Warren. And so to the members of the public, if you want to speak on this item number 20, you'll need to raise your hand in the Zoom function or push *6. *9 on your phone if you're dialing in, or fill out a blue card by the time that the first speaker is done speaking, or email cityclerk@cupertino.org by that time as well. Welcome, Lisa. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm actually glad this is being discussed, and I am very glad that Councilmember Moore has mentioned what I wanted to say, in that I do think it would be really useful to have a traffic count of the bicycles, unicycles, whatever is meant to be in those lanes that I don't see using them. And in fact, when they first went in, there was a lot of chatter about how bicyclists who are everywhere do not feel safe in those kind of lanes, and that how puddles and trash and leaves collect in them, and all it takes is one little bump and you're flying into traffic because the street sweepers can't get in there, and yada, yada, yada. I don't know if that has been addressed, but I know that that was a very big discussion, and people were not using them for that and other reasons. And I don't see people in them. And I could be mistaken, but I feel like that primary section that was done closer to Apple, for Apple, probably, and in front of Main Street, was done sort of as a pilot thing. And maybe I'm wrong, like, okay, we're gonna do this, and if it goes well, we're gonna go all the way. So I wouldn't think we have to be married to the idea, even if it's already approved, to go further if it's not functioning the way it's meant to be. And it's going to cost money, no matter where the money's coming from. So I think I've asked before if there would please be a study on the actual traffic in those bike lanes. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And we don't have further hands raised in Zoom, so we will go ahead and move to our member of the public. Welcome, Jennifer Griffin, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm sorry that our new public works person has to take this on, but I guess one of my concerns about it is sort of echoes what Lisa said. I always kind of felt like the part from Tantau to Wolf was like a pilot section, and I kind of resented it because it was dumped on the eastern part of the city. We were the guinea pig again. We're going to be the ones that have to handle the fallout from the Rise Valco with the 3,000 housing units. We don't know what is going to happen to that Wolf-Stevens Creek intersection. I guess when I come up there, I'm really, really concerned. Like when I come down Stevens Creek and I'm going to turn, I would turn right on Wolf to go north. I really am upset seeing that that right turn lane has been abandoned. Nobody's using it. It's a piece of land. And what happens is that you have cars coming up to, in the third lane, the closest one to the right turn lane. It's not there anymore. They have to make a right-hand turn. And I understand now from the bike commission that you can actually make a right-hand turn there. You don't have to wait for the red light. But the problem is that the people in the crosswalk are a bullseye for anybody having to turn right. The traffic backs up, the buses are sitting there, and you're having to have a complete bedlam at that intersection. And I predict, I hate to say this, but when you get to Stevens Creek and De Anza Boulevard, it is going to be a nightmare. Where are we going to be abandoning the right-hand turn lanes? Before we do this, we need to have plans put out across the city that is a major intersection of what the plans are. Where are we abandoning the right-hand turn lane? How are we planning on getting traffic up and down De Anza Boulevard, Stevens Creek, et cetera? What are we doing with the buses? There's a school there, the Catholic primary school. You've got the Cali Mill property there. Are we going to take this thing up the hill past Blackberry Farm? How do we do that? They're trying to build a bridge there. There is no room. And what happens when we get down to Foothill Boulevard? And then we're getting to the quarry. Yes, it may be good. I don't ride a bicycle, so maybe I'm a bad person to talk about this. But the part where you cannot turn right on a red light is really something they need to look at. It backs traffic up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And that concludes our blue card comments live. Madam City Clerk, were there any emailed comments in to you during this time?
No, Mayor.
Okay, let's bring this back up to the dais. Is there a motion that anyone is willing to bring in for the purposes of furthering our discussion? Vice Mayor, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring the motion to adopt resolution number 22-046, a resolution of local support authorizing the filing of an application for funding assigned to the MTC, committing any necessary matching funds and stating assurance to complete the project for the OBEG Cycle 2 grant application for the Stevens Creek Boulevard separated bike lane project.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. And I think that's a typo. It should be OBAG. It's not. It should be OBAG, not OBEG. Okay. Yeah, I saw a head nod. So
yeah.
Okay.
So
great.
OBEG.
OBAG. Okay, great. So we have a motion on the table. I see Councilmember Way patiently waiting with her hand raised. Did you want to second that motion?
Yes, please. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The motion's on the table. Before we go back to the lights, Madam City Clerk, let's go ahead and see if there are any further comments. The motion's on the table for discussion. And I do see two hands raised, Vice Mayor and then Councilmember Willie.
Okay. So this project, I think, is the priority #1 project in our bike path master plan. My older son rides bike through Stevens Creek to Cupertino High daily. He's now in college. My younger son, who attends Lynbrook, but he goes to Memorial Park through Stevens Creek multiple times to play tennis. However, he doesn't bike because the brother of his best friend is the kid who died at Bob Road. So he used to really love to ride bikes, but he has that mental block. He doesn't ride on street. So I think this is the most important project for Cupertino, including both the separated bike lane and intersection. Of course, we would want to do our best to mitigate the impact on the vehicle traffic. But the project, I think, once it's safe, more people will use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Willie.
Yeah. Since there's been some technical discussion, I think I'll, kind of also pile on to help our new Public Works Director kind of understand what I think the overall concerns are. But yeah, I have concerns. It was probably about a year ago that something pertaining to the Stevens Creek was on the agenda. And so I brought up the fact that, when I come down Stevens Creek, meaning going from east to west on Stevens Creek and you approach Wolf and you're not able to do the turning north onto a Wolf Road the way you used to, and the way they've brought that concrete all out, no turn on Green, really confuses the traffic that's there, where Stevens Creek is one of our main arteries. I mean, we already have a lot of traffic, and then when we make these dramatic changes, and that particular night I brought it up that because that concrete is so squared off and nobody's allowed to move over and turn and get rid of that amount of the traffic, that they have to wait. And they can only do that when the through traffic is going. And the answer from staff was, no, that's what we intended. That, you know, he can't turn right from the right lane to the right lane because it's so sharp, he winds up turning right and he goes all the way over to the third lane on Wolf because he's not able to make those types of turns, and that the traffic isn't able to move through because the light's not green and it's a no turn on red, holds up that traffic. And then I had heard on a different occasion, well, it doesn't apply to buses. Buses are able to go straight through even though the cars aren't. That's kind of confusing because we have the same problem at Finch. And so, again, this being a major artery, and when we start making these significant changes, I agree with Councilman Moore that CEQA, I mean, it's really dramatically changing how many cars are able to get through at any one time. And I would sure hope that we revisit shortly thereafter. I mean, it's major concrete and signal movement to move these things in this way, but still, it's something that once we move away from it, it's there for life. But when it's currently done and everybody's fully aware of what's being done, I feel that's the right time to sit there. Did it really work out the way we intended? And if not, let's make sure we really understand before we do more with the same type of thinking that kind of got us stuck. And so I'll just leave it at that tonight. That's not really the topic about accepting the money or not. Just as a practice, I would sure hope that we really pay attention to our main thoroughfares that are the main circulation for our community and the impacts to those. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Woolley. And to Director Morley, you came in highly touted as someone who listens to the community, and I do look very much forward to see how you process this and what this looks like, say, half a year out. So, Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised.
So I wonder, can we refer this intersection design issue to the Bike Path Commission to help dig it further?
I don't know. Let me check in with our city attorney at this point. Do you think that this could be feasibly added to the motion or have the motion amended to that effect, Chris? And just to repeat it, a referral to the Bike Ped Commission with regard to intersection design, which presumably would be part of the use of the expenditure of these monies. You'll need to. That particular mic is a little bit.
I have to lean forward in a very awkward way, but I will do my best. I would defer the answer to that question in part to Matt because I just would want to confirm that the intersection the intersection design and the funding, that there is a nexus between those two items.
Fair enough.
So I will have to punt that to you, Matt.
So I think what we can commit to is reviewing the project with the Bike and Ped Commission, and if that's the intent of the request, I think that is doable. They should get updates on our projects anyways on how we're progressing. In terms of intersection design, that's an engineering activity with significant risk associated with it, and we'd want to have the engineers managing that part of it. So we can tell the commission about the intent of the design and how it's happening. They can provide us their feedback on functionality and how it's working, and we can take it from there.
Okay. Well, nothing prevents us from watching those commission meetings. Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. So I did pull up the CIP dashboard to get a look at this section, and it looks to me like it's going from Wolf to Danza Boulevard and ending there. So it's just going to be handling the east side of that intersection and putting in the protected lanes there. I do think that you're going to have a lot more challenges as you approach Danza College in the next stretch, as opposed to this one, because you have a less significant number of driveway cuts for people to navigate around. So I just wanted to bring that up. And so I think in the future, when we see this project continue, that if we can have the map in there, so I'm not digging through, I think that'll help. The picture's worth 1,000 words thing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, looking forward to it, everyone, in terms of getting updates on how this process goes, and I think we've provided some good and pithy input from the public and council tonight. Let us go ahead and vote with our lights.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we have been going for a bit over an hour at this point, so let me go ahead and take that promised 5-minute break at this time. We're at 9:17. We'll reconvene at 9:23.